Hey, 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 you are joining the Cover One Fantasy Show. I am one of your three amigos, Greg Tompsett, joined by Anthony Prohaska and Rich Haynes. Rich, how are we doing this evening?
Man, doing awesome. It's come on, let's be honest. For us, fantasy football fans and football fans, it's here. It's here. I got the bourbon. I got the bourbon rolling, so I'm ready to go. I'm just super excited about everything going on. I'm super excited about football starting. I don't know. I'm pumped. I got a big weekend ahead of me. I was excited to watch the game last night. My neighbor invited me over for a minute, and we had some bourbon for a second. Chloe, so shout out to Chloe. So pre-gaming a little bit, and I was talking about the show, so she might, neighbor Chloe. So maybe she's watching for a second right now, but I'm just excited to talk about football.
Awesome, Anthony. Can you top that? Did you get invited to neighbor Chloe's?
No, I watched Rich and neighbor Chloe from the street, but I had just as good a time out there. No, I'm doing all right. I'm sipping on a strawberry lemonade sparkling water. It's not a seltzer. It's just sparkling water. It's delicious. It's from Target, Market Pantry brand. Love that. Shout out to them, sponsor of the show. I'm doing all right. I'm excited. Football came back last night. We've got more football this weekend. I had a glorious day in fantasy. Briefly for a minute, I secured Alvin Kamara in one of my main leagues, which, I tweeted it. Trades are always fun. And I tweeted out my life principles. One, I live life a quarter mile at a time. And two, I refuse to play fantasy football unless I have Alvin Kamara. And I secured him. And then just about an hour and a half later, I lost Gus Edwards for the year. And then, I hate Tom Brady, and he had a miraculous comeback again because, this and that, and Chris Godwin's pass interference doesn't count. But it doesn't matter because football is back, and I'm enjoying being upset about fantasy and the prospect of fantasy this weekend. The Bills are here. I'm pumped for Rich because this Browns-Chiefs game looks like it's going to be fantastic. There's a lot of good games on the docket this week in general, and it's just, I don't know, if you're a football fan, fantasy, real NFL, whatever, college, it's impossible to not be excited around this time of year, especially in Buffalo. The air is getting chillier. It's starting to feel like elite fall weather outside. It was like it was a crispy 72 this afternoon. It was like 55 when I left for work this morning. Ooh, it's just good times. But, to circle it back, Greg, how are you doing?
Good. It's the same as you guys. It's fun to be real. And last night, sitting down watching a game that counted, I had our lovely sponsors, Underdog. I had Underdog lineups going last night. I made money. I profited from my Underdog battle royales that I did. Which, for anyone who's not sure, if you had frustration going through some of the crazy algorithms you have to fight in other DFS sites where you have to go against people with 250 lineups, in this world, you do a draft and only one person is going to end up with that guy that you drafted, or only one guy is going to end up with the player that you believe in. And you can also go in and do some player prop parlays that we might bring up a few of those later as we get into some betting matchups that we like with some over-unders that you can do and make yourself a little bit of money. But speaking of making a little bit of money on that game last night, man, that was a fun game. What an awesome kickoff to the season. You had, multiple leads exchanged down at the very end of the game. Greg Zuerlein looks horrendous and then hits a 47-yard, what should have been or could have been game-winning kick. I think both teams, what was it, threw the ball 108 times and ran the ball 32. I think
Dak was 40 of 58. Dak threw the ball 58 times.
Oh, it was fun. It was awesome. Rich, what were some of the takeaways you had from last night besides how fun it was?
We talked about it on text kind of during the game. I was just shocked at the amount of times Dallas threw the football. I figured they were going to throw the football this year, which is why I have a ton of shares of CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. But, and even, I don't have any of Michael Gallup, but I understand why people are taking Michael Gallup from a value perspective. But there was literally a stretch where I think I counted 3 straight drives. And it's not like Dallas was down by 30 at any point in that game where they had to throw, right? 3 straight drives where I don't think Ezekiel Elliott had a carry, which is just that. That's just insane to me. And maybe it was, game plan. Maybe they knew that they were going to go into Tampa Bay and maybe they felt that they could, exploit their defense from passing perspective and thought, maybe with, some of the COVID things on their offensive line that, hey, let's not, we're at a disadvantage running the football. But you paid Zeke
$90 million.
$90 million. And you gave that man 11 carries and you targeted him twice in the passing game. And Tony Pollard had, 4 targets, and Tony Pollard did much more, in my opinion, with his targets in the passing game than Zeke did. Yeah. It was just weird to me. And, 1 week, just like this week with Bills and Browns fans, I'm really excited for the overreaction. Either way, whatever happens, win or lose against the Steelers or the Chiefs. And kind of same thing here, the overreaction maybe to Zeke, because it is only 1 week, but fantasy owners waking up this morning and seeing the 3.3 points in a standard league and, maybe a couple more PPR with the 2 catches. And that's a little scary.
Well, you look at it a couple ways. There were 2 catches that got called back by penalties. So 2 of the penalties Dallas had were catches by Ezekiel Elliott. Not that they would have made a big difference, but 4 catches for 25 yards salvages a little bit more. Maybe he ends up with like a 7 or 9 point game. Then you have, the text exchange we had, which was funny. We were talking to one of the other guys who has a show themselves. When they had that toss out there, Ezekiel Elliott was one-on-one with a cornerback. Yeah. Like you got to convert that. You have to be able to get that in the end zone, and that's what you're banking on. And there is a piece of this where I'm not advocating Ezekiel Elliott as a buy low candidate right now, but the way that you look at this is the number 1 run defense in the NFL. All those plays that everybody remembers of watching Vita Vea manhandle people. Well, yeah, it's kind of hard to run against that too when there's also Ndamukong Suh and 2 awesome linebackers and really good athletic contain edge rushers. They're the number 1 rush defense in the NFL. So take this as a piece of when we get to these start-sit questions later on in the game, you're going to want to go through and look at, you might want to lean the other way when your running back is playing Tampa Bay, because it doesn't have to be a terrible game for them. It can be that the offense simply does what Dallas does, and that I'm not saying everybody's going to pass 58 times and rush 11, but that is one of the options that you have here. If you're playing against Tampa, they're going to lean the other way. So I do think better games are coming for Zeke. Certainly better matchups are coming for Zeke. But, yeah, last night was certainly a concern. If you took him 3rd overall, 4th overall, 5th overall, that had to send a little shiver down your spine. Anthony, maybe on the Buccaneers side, what were some of the things that you took away? I know you're a huge fan of Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski.
I was going to say, I took away how much I hate Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski.
He's never going to die. He's immortal.
I just hate him. It is what it is. I can't stand him. But one of my takeaways, first from just like a football perspective, pardon me, I don't like the Dallas Cowboys. I found myself halfway through that game. Granted, I was doing disguised coverage last night on the Cover One Sports Network. But I watched the beginning of the game and then I recorded it, finished it once I had finished disguised coverage. The more I watched the game, I suddenly just came away being like, I really like Dak Prescott. Like, I liked him at Mississippi State. I thought his story was cool. I liked his game. And then just watching him just stand in the pocket with no fear. There were a couple times when Vita Vea was driving Connor Williams and McGovern into what I thought was going to be like into Dak's plant leg, and he was going to break his leg. Yeah. And he would just stand there with no fear, pick his leg up a little bit. How many throws was Dak throwing off platform and just dropping him in the bucket?
For a Dak owner or a Cowboys fan, honestly.
Yes.
Your biggest fear in this game was, hey, is he really back? He looked 100%
He
back.
Looked gorgeous, and it was fun watching him. Times. Yes, he did. He looked good. He looked healthy. And then from a fantasy perspective, if you had any pieces of these offense, what a fun night. Watching Brady sling it to Godwin and literally everybody but Mike Evans. And then on the Dallas side of the ball, CeeDee Lamb looked great. Amari Cooper, when healthy, showed everybody why he's one of the best route runners in the NFL. It was just a really fun, I'm a big defense guy, and all the jokes that were made on college football last week about how boring Penn State and Wisconsin was and Clemson and Georgia. I loved those games. I thought they were fantastic, but shootouts are fun too, and good offensive games are fun. And especially from the new age NFL aspect that we see today. And Warren Sharp tweeting out, what was the EPA or how efficient Dallas was, going with Dak versus what they were doing when they would give it to Zeke. And just, watching both teams march up and down the field. We got some turnovers. We got the Godwin fumble on the goal line was a nice play from Dallas, added to the drama. It was a nice start. And, from a football perspective. And then, from fantasy, I think there were some solid takeaways. And I love your piece on Zeke. I forget who. I think Ted Wynn was the one who tweeted it out, that it's not mutually exclusive. Zeke didn't play good, but also this is probably the toughest matchup that he has all year. They can both be true. So, but again, like Rich mentioned as well, we get the overreaction. If the Browns lose this week, this season's done. If you're a Zeke owner, he's awful. I ruined my draft by taking him 5th. This is terrible. We're in overreaction season. But what a great and exciting game for fantasy, for real football to start things off and give us a lot of things to talk about, potentially look forward to going into the weekend.
So maybe one final thing for this game. What were some of the things we've talked about how not to overreact to Zeke? What were some of the things we should take seriously? Rich talked about his love for Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. I think that's very real. I think that's legit. I think that we talked about how once Antonio Brown became a part of this offense, he was getting equal snaps and equal target share to some of the other guys. Rob Gronkowski also looked like maybe he took this offseason pretty seriously.
He looks healthy.
I think the 14 targets for Chris Godwin is as reassuring as you can get for a piece of that offense. I don't know that you're going to have very many games the rest of the year where Mike Evans is 5th in targets on that offense, but it certainly is a little concerning that this is maybe not the two-headed passing attack that people were picking as pretty consistently both third-round picks in just about every draft, and that now, hey, maybe it's Chris Godwin is a top tier, and then Brown, Gronkowski, and Evans is kind of that next group. Rich, do you think that's an overreaction, or would you be concerned if you were a Mike Evans owner?
No, I don't think I would be concerned yet. Again, kind of similar to the Zeke discussion. I think you have to take everything week one with a little bit of a grain of salt. But yeah, I mean, I certainly think that we talked about it in our shows leading up to the season. Tom Brady isn't going to necessarily pound the ball to one particular wide receiver. He is going to take what the defense gives him, and whatever the game plan says for that particular week, whatever the defender that they're going to exploit, that's who he's going to go for. They kept doing the single coverage on the outside, whether it was Godwin or Antonio Brown, and they kept exploiting that single coverage all night long. Evans just didn't happen to be in that coverage set, in my opinion. So, Anthony talked about this off air a little bit. Evans tends to have those weeks where he goes 3 for 24, and then next week he goes 8 for 124 and 2 touchdowns, and you're like, oh, I love Mike Evans. So I think when you draft Mike Evans, you're going into it, that's what you're going to get out of him. Now, I will say though, I mean, I definitely would keep an eye on it because, Gronk does look healthy.
Yes.
Brown is there and going to be a bigger part of that offense for, the entire year right now instead of just the second half of the season like he was last year. So if Evans does have a big game in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I would probably look to sell high and try to just get a share of a different offense that doesn't have as many options as Tampa Bay. And, maybe has a quarterback that's going to, zone in or target a particular wide receiver a little bit more than, Brady just going to spread it around to whoever the open man is.
No, I think that's the right way to look at it. And I think that, similar to Zeke, I would not panic with Mike Evans, but I will say if you snagged Rob Gronkowski as your backup tight end, I would feel good about that. I would feel like that was a solid value. I don't know that all of a sudden he's top 5 tight end Rob Gronkowski again. But if you were one who maybe waited and you got multiple stabs at a Tyler Higbee and a Gerald Everett or a Noah Fant, and one of those guys was Rob Gronkowski, when you're doing that, and we advocated for some of that, hey, either go early at tight end and get one of those top 3 or wait and get one of the guys later. The reason you wait is you're hoping to hit on Darren Waller last year. Darren Waller was not a top pick, or 2 years ago. That you're hoping to hit on those guys before they take the leap. Mark Andrews before he took his leap. You're hoping to hit on those guys that end up as the 4th or 5th tight end, but you drafted them 13th, 14th, 15th. I'm not ready to declare that Rob Gronkowski is that guy, but if he looks healthy and you have Tom Brady's trust, that is a really high probability of touchdown scoring, and touchdowns are so influential at the tight end position where you don't have the same amount of target share. There's a lot of potential there. So I would feel good if you were an Antonio Brown owner. I would feel good if you were a Rob Gronkowski owner. I feel like you're in positive position from those guys. I would not panic if you were a Zeke owner. I would not panic if you were a Mike Evans owner. But definitely some fantasy goodness in that matchup last night. Any final takeaways before our next topic?
I think the Tampa Bay aspect is kind of, I think that offense you're going to see that. I think Godwin and Brown are a little more stable, but you're with the plethora of weapons that they have, and depending on game script, you're going to see some games like Antonio Brown could have a 3 for 45 game. Godwin could have like a 4 for 46. You know, they've got those games where Evans is going to boom. Someone else is not going to. There is that volatility within that offense, but with how explosive they can be, you know, to your point, I think don't overreact over one game, but you are going to get some games with guys from this offense because it's just impossible to sustain 3 top wide receivers at all times. And this is not the Chiefs offense where they're explosive and they scored a ton, but it's really Kelsey and Tyreek Hill, or the Packers offense where it's like they score a ton, but it's really like Devontae Adams and then Aaron Jones. The Buccaneers get it from everybody, and the running backs didn't even do much last night. Wait till you get a Buccaneers game where Fournette starts to do some things, or maybe there's more Gio Bernard, or maybe Ronald Jones gets out of the doghouse a little bit. There is a lot to work with for this Tampa Bay offense, and I think if you drafting into that offense, that expectation had to be there.
Rich, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, there's a couple questions in the chat that we may want to look at. You know, Taylor put up this question about Gio Bernard. Is he a watch list player or a must get? Greg, what's your opinion on that question?
So we knew Bernard was coming in last night a little dinged up, that maybe they were going to manage his snap count. I do think that we saw some in that 2-minute drill. The first drive, it was, first down, second down, first guy in was Gio Bernard right off the bat, and then they used him in that 2-minute drill. I don't know that the scenarios kind of set up the way that they would have thought. They were getting a lot of chunk plays. They weren't getting into a lot of third downs. They were leading, so they didn't need the 2-minute drill hurry-up setup, and Bernard was dinged up, but you still saw him, and he still had a snap count and usage where he wasn't a big draft investment. If he's out there and available in your league, yes, I actually think he's right there with J.D. McKissick, James White, those kind of guys. And I think there are games where Tampa may not be jumping out immediately into a lead. They have maybe a tougher defense that they have to go against and are hitting more third downs. So I do like him as a rosterable player to at least have. He's great in a bye week where your starting guy is someone you could put in. Anthony, is he somebody you would go after, or you think I'm maybe overplaying it?
No, I think you're spot on. I took him in our dynasty league that we did back in July. I think depending on the size of your league, how many teams or how deep your rosters are, I think he's almost a must get depending on the size of your league. If you're in a 14 team or a 12 team and you've got like 20-ish roster spots per team or whatever, grab Gio Bernard. That's a fantastic person to have just sitting there collecting dust on your bench potentially. If you've got a smaller roster size, I still think he's close to being rosterable even in smaller leagues, but at the very least, at the very worst, he is somebody that's on that watch list, because if something happens to Fournette or if something happens to Ronald Jones, he's right there. And also to your point, Greg, which you so eloquently put, there are going to be game scripts that favor him, and he's already got Tom Brady's trust, which is a tremendous thing. We heard Bruce Arians already talk about the role that he has in this team. So at the very least, his floor isn't tremendously high, but he's got the trust and confidence of the important people on his team. He's already got a role, and that role could expand if anything happens to anybody else at his position and or the game script that he has on a weekly basis. So I think he's a must get, and he's a rosterable player depending on your size. At the very least, very worst, he should be on your watch list every week.
So a couple things we're going to go through is really talking about how we're going to approach these shows now that we shift from off-season position previews, draft prep, draft strategy into regular season mode, where we're going to talk about the challenging start-sit decisions, where we're going to talk about trade offers and trade scenarios that come up, that we're going to talk about games that we like. When we talk about the games we like, we'll talk about, does weather impact things? Are there spots where we want to be impacted by the betting lines that we like, and some of the things we might want to wager on a game? That's going to bring into play some of the things you can take information from with high over-under scores, get potential game script influence and how those things are done. And it's going to be interesting to go through. And we did put out a tweet earlier asking for people who had questions for their start-sit matchups, or who were putting things out into the Twitter sphere for the different hashtags for fantasy football out there. And I think we captured a couple of those. Rich, you want to bring up one of the guys that asked us a question?
Yeah. Give me 1 second here. We'll go ahead and bring up the first one. So this one came in from our friend Rob Quinn on the Twitter. Rob Quinn 619. Who should I start in flex? Mr. Kareem Hunt for the Browns versus the Chiefs. Nyheim Hines for the Colts versus the Seahawks. Jacoby Myers, wide receiver for the Pats versus the Dolphins, or Gabe Davis of Buffalo Bills fame versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I don't know, Anthony, maybe you take the first stab at that, and then I think I'll go second this time.
Sure. After I Googled what a flex is, and started to do some research and figure that out. I like his options here, but for me, I think this was a pretty easy slam dunk right away. It's Kareem Hunt against Kansas City. I think Kareem Hunt is, I don't even want to say borderline. I think he's an RB2 for most teams, given the scheme and the offense that he's in Cleveland, let alone in a game where the Browns are going to have to score, whether that means they try to, run more successfully, which they can do, and score more that way and play keep away and ball control, or if Kansas City does put some points up there, Kareem Hunt's going to be the guy that is going to be out there as the Browns have to get the ball up and down the field quickly and score. So whether it's their normal game script, Kareem Hunt works. If it's an accelerated game script with having to keep up with Kansas City, Kareem Hunt also works. So I like that aspect for him. I like the talent. And then also just with the other players given here, we've said it so many times. We could change the name of this show to Volume is King. I think out of everybody here, Kareem Hunt has the highest floor for volume and the highest guaranteed aspect that what you're going to get.
Yeah, Anthony. Yeah, those are great comments. I agree. I don't think this is a big question, even though I am, a Browns homer. But the over/under in that game is 53.5, and Greg put it very well last week. Where when you're looking, whether it's for sports betting, whether it's for roster decisions, whether it's the daily fantasy, you look at those over-unders, and you kind of take a look at what kind of points Vegas thinks is going to be put up in the game, because they are very rarely very wrong, right? So it's going to be around 53.5 points. It's going to be. So with that being said, yeah, I mean, I just think that Kareem Hunt is going to get, he's going to get carries. He's going to get those passes out of the backfield. They may be down, I want to say the Browns are going to come out and beat the Chiefs, but who knows, right? I mean, they're going into Arrowhead. You don't know. One thing that we'll probably talk about a little bit more later is, not 100% sure Odell's going to play, which takes a mouth to feed out of that lineup. Okay. So, again, I agree. I think Kareem Hunt's a slam dunk here, and especially if the Browns get behind, he's going to see the field more than Nick Chubb, and he's going to get those. He's going to get those passing situations, those dump downs. So I think Kareem Hunt this week. If I had to kind of throw, a kind of projection out there for Kareem, I'd feel really comfortable that in a PPR league he's getting you 14, 15 points. And if he scores, maybe more. But I would be very comfortable that he's going to get 4 or 5 catches. He's going to be able to get that 14, 15 pointer.
No, I think you guys are spot on, and I think that there's reasons to consider. I can see somebody taking an upside stab that Jacoby Myers is the number 1 receiver in New England, but you're going against either Xavier Howard or Byron Jones. That's not great. I like Nyheim Hines, but Nyheim Hines is just the TJ Maxx knockoff of Kareem Hunt. Like,
don't do that to Nyheim Hines. We need him in our league that we share a team.
So I mean, I agree. I think that Kareem Hunt is the right choice. I will say Rob later on did add he was hesitating because he also has Nick Chubb. And this is a very human response to things, but I'll tell you guys, don't look into that any further than last night. If you had CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, was there a reason not to play one versus the other? If you had, Antonio Brown or Rob Gronkowski or Chris Godwin, was there a reason to be like, oh, well, we don't want to play both of them? If you, trust exactly what Rich just said, trust your projection. If you think they're going to get the touches and the game script is in their favor, which in this one, it certainly is. This is not one of those, I don't believe, salt away the lead, 4-minute drill, 28 carry Nick Chubb game. It's just not that kind of game. I think Cleveland can win this game, but if they win, it's probably going to be in a shootout. A shootout favors Kareem Hunt, and that's going to be more touches and more catches for him. So I agree. I think this is a great problem to have. I think those are good rosterable guys behind him, but I'd go Kareem Hunt as well.
Yeah, and Greg, to your point, that's obviously an interesting piece of information. But I agree, because I mean, there's been plenty of games last year that both Chubb and Hunt ate in the same game, and I think we all feel it's kind of weird, right? Like, man, am I going to start a team's backfield really? And when they have defined roles like Hunt and Chubb do, I mean, if you have a 53-point over/under, and Cleveland likes to run the football. And they like to establish the play action for Baker so that Baker can be more effective and get him out of the pocket and all that kind of stuff. I mean, why not, right? I mean, it's very possible that, Chubb could have a 80-yard on the ground game with a touchdown, rushing the football and a couple grabs, and Hunt has that 5-6 catch game I just mentioned, and you're able to get 35 points out of both of them, which I think most fantasy owners in a PPR league would be okay with, getting 35 out of the running back position. So, I agree that I think just tend to think about it more from a real football perspective and go, why would I start both of those guys? And I think we need, more people need to kind of set that thought process aside at times.
And it may be few and far between, but there are times, especially again, given the talent in the system, where there's been two viable fantasy running backs. We saw it with the Falcons the year they went to the Super Bowl with Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman. We saw it in Alvin Kamara's rookie year with he and Mark Ingram. If you are on a sustainable and well-skilled offense, and exactly to your point, Rich, if you've got guys who have their defined role and will see touches, I mean, that's fine. I have no problem starting both Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, given the role they play, the position they play on this Browns team, what the philosophy is, and especially given the matchup. That's a really good point.
Well, we talked about it, obviously prior to the crazy injury luck that Baltimore has had. There are matchups where it was going to make sense to start J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Yes. Because, hey, they're playing Houston. They're going to be salting away the lead. Get all the shares you can of the Baltimore run game in those games. This is maybe not that exact style, but I don't know. There's a ton of matchups where you're sitting Nick Chubb regardless of what the matchup is. And then you're going to pick your spots with Kareem Hunt that, there may be some that are better than others. But again, you drafted him in that area for a reason. I think he's a playable guy. I think the OBJ factor is a little one there, but is maybe just a couple more targets that are spread around. So I think that's a good one. We got a good question here in the chat. I'm going to go with Jiven.
Good
I'm going to say Jiven. We'll see if I mangled
Jiven sounds more fun, but
Jiven is fun. I do like that. I've officially pivoted to Team Jiven. Do you think it was a bad trade for me to trade Alvin Kamara for Najee Harris and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which was his RB2 was Kareem Hunt and Javonte Williams? I very, very rarely like to be on the two side of a 2-for-1 trade. Almost always when you're trading 2-for-1 and consolidating to get the better player, I want the one side of it. This might be an exception for me because those two players are both good enough that if you got an early second and late second round pick for your mid first, man, that's a pretty good trade. So I like Alvin Kamara more than Najee Harris and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I normally would like to go the other direction. if you're now getting 2 starters for one, and obviously Edwards-Helaire and Najee Harris are solidified starters over Kareem Hunt and Javonte Williams, I totally get it. Like I don't, like I said, normally I prefer to go the other direction where you're consolidating, getting the talent. But Rich, it's tough. We like Alvin Kamara.
Yes, we do.
There's other reasons too here, but I think it was a reasonable strategy to get 2 good starters at running back.
Yeah, I understand the point. I think one thing just to be careful is I think we all have an opinion of what we think Najee Harris will be, but we don't know what Najee Harris will be. I mean, we think he's going to be great because, again, as Anthony's mentioned, we're about volume, and volume is king, and that'll make sense. But that Pittsburgh offensive line is garbage. So who knows? I don't know. Who knows? What if Najee Harris isn't anything special? And I'm not.
What if you have a Zeke game like last night?
Yeah, and I'm not the biggest CEH guy. As you know, I mean, I've talked about it a little bit on the show. I mean, I get, he's in a good offense, which is great, but he underperformed a little bit last year, and who knows what's going to happen there. I mean, if you look at some different projections, not necessarily what I personally believe, but if you look at some of the different projections out there, and I'll just use our friends at Football Guys for a quick moment on this one. I mean, he's middle of the road this week. I mean, Miles Sanders and him are side by side, and we all have talked ill about Miles Sanders multiple times, right? So
never like that. Never a neighborhood you want to be in.
Yeah, no, unless you are me and you end up drafting Miles Sanders in 2 leagues after crapping on him for 17 hours of content. But we'll digress on that one. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a terrible thought. Personally, I don't hate Kareem Hunt as my second running back, so I don't know that it was that terrible. Now, obviously, you do have a little bit more depth if Najee Harris comes through, but especially after they traded Latavius Murray, I mean, I don't know. I probably would have stuck with Kamara personally in that particular situation. But I mean, I get the thought process.
Yeah. Anthony, you want to be the tiebreaker?
I mean, well, my heart says Alvin. It will always say Alvin. But I mean, if we're to Rich's point, and all things considered, if you're banking on what the upside is for all these guys, so Alvin Kamara is a top 5 running back, probably top 3, could even be top 2. If Najee and CEH hit their ceilings, they're both top 12, top 10-ish potential running backs. And so if we're looking at it in that vacuum of what your projection is, I think it's okay to trade.
All 3 hit their ceilings, I think he had the right trade.
Yes, that's exactly it.
The safer side is taking the guy that what Alvin Kamara's worst case scenario is RB10.
Yes. Yeah, and I think in a vacuum like that, I think trading an RB1 for 2 second-round running backs for 2 top 12, 10-ish running backs is good value. I think the depth is there, and then all of a sudden your running back group, you're sitting there with Najee and CEH and Hunt and Javonte Williams. I would say I'm assuming because of how it shook out originally with Kamara and then Hunt and Javonte, I'm assuming your wide receivers are really sick and you went wide receiver early. So that would also play into it too. Like if you came away with, I don't know, like Kamara and then Calvin Ridley and Terry McLaurin or some kind of combo like that. And then
last night, Amari Cooper or Chris
There you go, Amari Cooper or Godwin. And then you were sitting there with Hunt as your RB2. That might make me stick with Kamara a little bit. But, I don't think it's bad. Greg, I think you led off really well with it. Usually, like, if you're on the 2 for 1 side, if you're on the 2, it's usually like, is it going to work? But I think this one is close to fair value. And if everybody hits their ceiling and what you believe in, then I think you came out on the right end with the 2.
Rich, I know you mentioned Latavius Murray earlier. So by far the most talked about topic in fantasy right now.
The defense against the dark arts of running backs.
What in the world is going on? So I'll rattle off the transactions that have happened, and then you let us know who you like. So obviously, 2 weeks ago, we lost J.K. Dobbins, unfortunately, to an ACL with the Baltimore Ravens running back. Then Wednesday of this week, Baltimore lost Gus Edwards. So at first, Tyson Williams was a handcuff. Now all of a sudden, maybe he's their lead guy. He's the only one still on the roster from the original group. They then signed both Le'Veon Bell and Devonta Freeman to their practice squad. And then the day later, late last night, they signed Latavius Murray to their active roster with some incentives in the contract. How do you wade through this muck? What do you make of the Baltimore backfield?
Yeah, so I was actually texting with Joel from our fantasy basketball league today.
Hey, Joel.
Randomly. So he was asking, we talk back and forth. We've become friends, which is pretty funny. He lives in Minnesota. So he was asking me about this exact situation. Is completely random. So he was asking me about the Baltimore backfield because he was trying to figure out, should he put in a free agent auction bid on Tyson Williams. So we can talk about that as well in a moment. But, so I think, week one, Schefter came out with a pretty good piece today and kind of mentioned that, Tyson Williams is certainly going to get the run here in week one. He knows the offense. Yes. He's going to get
definitely
the chance.
The head start.
He's going to get the chance to shine. He's on the right end of the age curve. Obviously he's not a huge pedigree or highly drafted or anything like that, but that doesn't matter, right? Like if he gets the shot and establishes himself this week, I think that gives him a longer leash. So I personally think he's the guy to kind of at least own right now off the gate. I think Devonta Freeman, and Greg, you made a good point on a text string yesterday, and I agree with you. I don't think Devonta Freeman, I think he's probably practice squad at best and may not even see he may not even get the call up to the 53-man roster. And Schefter, as well as a couple of the Baltimore beat writers, I was kind of checking them out today, and Greg, again, you did a great job of mentioning this and pointing it out on the old tweeter today that, Latavius Murray got the guaranteed contract. It wasn't a huge deal, but it was the guaranteed contract. So yes, I agree with you 100%. You follow the money. So for me, I think week one's going to be Tyson Williams is going to get, your first down, second down kind of run, and you're going to see Murray kind of change of pace, third down. And maybe as the game goes on, if Williams struggles, they'll hand the ball to Murray a little bit more, but I think Williams is going to get that crack. So for me, Williams and Murray, I think will both be valuable in week one. If Williams establishes himself and has a good game in week one, man, I think he could, he could really solidify his role in that backfield. And right now for me, Le'Veon Bell, and I own him in a few weeks. I picked him up, but I don't know. I think he's more of a backup situation, kind of a vet guy that, I guess if Williams struggles this week, he may shine more later on once he understands the offense. But, I'd be interested in Williams and Murray. So, and we'll come back to this when we talk about free agent, bidding strategies, but I'm curious. The question was posed to me, so I'll just throw it out there now. We can circle back to it in a little bit. $1,000 free agent bidding budget. The question was, what would you bid on Tyson Williams right now? And the
$1,000
processed. The waivers processed this morning already. So I know what he bid. I know what the second place bid was. I know what I told him. So you guys think about it. Put a pin in it. We'll come back to it later when we talk about free agent bids.
So Anthony, if I had to rank them, I would put it Tyson Williams, Latavius Murray, almost in my mind like 55-45. I give Williams the head start, but not a huge one. Then a gap. Then Le'Veon Bell. Then a gap. Then Devonta Freeman. How would you put those four?
I think the gap between Freeman and Bell, and then the top two of Murray and Williams, however you want to rank them, to your point, is large. I also, not to be off, it's on topic. There's a movie or a show where follow the money is the detective says it, or somebody investigating somebody says it, and it's been driving me nuts ever since you sent that text that you follow. And if somebody watching it, say it.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's a kind of a theme in the Ozark show, which I can't wait for that season to come back.
Maybe it is.
The last season of Ozark, which has been rumored for a while. Just the Monday laundry.
And somebody keeps saying it's a theme. They just keep saying you follow the money, and it leads them to who the kingpin is or who really is the person behind the scenes.
That was a big part in All the President's Men about Watergate, like
nope,
the Robert
not
Redford
that.
movie. Oh, I mean that is a big piece of the famous, Watergate movie.
I'm glad that we got some answers.
Yeah, but
that's driving me nuts. But I think follow the money is super apropos here. For me, I like Williams. Somebody also went super deep down in the rabbit hole on the Fantasy Football Reddit page about Tyson Williams and what he was coming out of the draft and why he fits and all these things. And the top comment for it was like, "This confirms all my bias because he's on my team." I love this theory.
Yes.
But
a term that I've heard in the last week that I was not aware of is that instead of forecasting, that's wish casting. A
Oh,
lot of
nice.
people
I like that.
are very, very good at when they're on your roster.
Yes.
It's super easy to find the reasons that they're going to be the breakout guy
Of course.
versus actually objectively looking and being like, so
this the thing?
and we'll get into this in the fab because Tyson Williams is the exact kind of boom bust guy that is super intriguing in those early fab bids, but also like we know that they liked him to be on the roster as RB3. We have no idea if Baltimore likes him as a featured bell cow back. We just don't know. Now the answer might be yes.
1,000%.
It might be yes, absolutely. We're ready. Let's rock and roll. Or it might be, yeah, we weren't even 100% sure he was going to make the roster, but he made it as our 53rd guy. We don't know. We don't know the answer.
That's the thing. On a team that had, that's what gives me the cause for concern with him. On a team that had J.K. Dobbins as the 1, Gus Edwards as the 2, Justice Hill as the 3, and then those guys start to go down, and then it's like, well, let's grab Le'Veon Bell, and then another guy goes down, well, let's grab Devonta Freeman, and then we're also grabbing Latavius Murray. Granted, maybe you want some depth and you want to protect the position because all of a sudden you seem cursed, but I think the fact that they did bring in Latavius Murray and the fact that they gave him that guaranteed money, I think that not only speaks to Latavius Murray, but it also speaks to potentially maybe their lack of faith in Williams. And I think Rich's point is very spot on, though. If he's going to get the chance in this first week against a Raiders run defense that isn't tremendously great. So if Williams balls out, he could take that baton and he could run with it. But Latavius Murray is I like Greg, your order and your breakdown of it. I put Murray ahead a little more, maybe like a 53-47 for me. But I also like Latavius Murray. There were times, as an Alvin Kamara owner, I have had Latavius Murray many, many times. Whenever Kamara's been out, he's been a pretty decent RB2. He's shown that he can carry the mail still. He doesn't have a lot of mileage on the tires. He's pretty versatile. He's a veteran. He's responsible. He's sound. And even in that New Orleans offense, he got a decent amount of touches. They just didn't give Kamara the ball 30 times a game. They mixed in Latavius Murray by design. And I think he fits the scheme of Baltimore very well. That straight line runner who can see the hole and attack it. He's got size and contact balance. I think Murray fits. I like him as a player. He is my long-term priority. I think if everybody starts getting up to speed, I think exactly to Rich's point, which was great, the biggest wild card is Williams is going to get the baton this week. If he crushes it, then he might not relinquish that spot. That's the biggest thing that may go anywhere.
I'll give the example. All the people who are explaining the reason their guy is the number one guy, everyone made the exact same cases last year for Raquel Armstead in Jacksonville and James Robinson. And Raquel Armstead was the more drafted player than James Robinson. Yep. So everybody says, oh, I knew James Robinson was the pick from the number one part. Well, not all that many people drafted him. Most people picked him up later on afterwards, and an awful lot of people drafted Raquel Armstead because they told themselves the story of why he was going to be the guy. Because they were wish casting, and they were no, look, this is why he's going to be the guy to take over that spot. So, when it comes up in the fab discussion, maybe we want to jump into it now.
I want to jump into a quick thing.
You don't know who's going to be that guy, and you want to get shares of it when it's unknown.
1,000%. I want to petition for us to, I know it was a typo, to only from now on refer to Latavius Murray as layabouts Murray. That needs to be the thing. That is what he is. I would like to bring this to the table. Second and third motion, if so, layabouts Murray is Latavius Murray. So we've got Mango White Claw is Trevor Lawrence. We don't even call him Trevor Lawrence anymore. And layabouts Murray is Latavius Murray. There we go. Thank you.
It's fantastic. I think I tried to call him Levante earlier. I was so layabouts is great. That's
layabouts Murray.
All right. So Rich, do we have another question we want to go through, or do we want to pivot to the fab?
No, we can. We got one more. I think that makes sense that we can go into. So let me bring that one up for us here. So this was a flex lineup question. So currently, and that might be a little bit hard to see, I'm not sure because we got a lot going on, but currently in the flex spot, he has Corey Davis for the Jets, and the question was in a PPR, hey, is this the right call? Or excuse me, this was a standard league. This is a standard league, so this is important. This is a standard league question. He has Corey Davis out there, but he has Chase Claypool on his bench, Sonny Michel, Daryl Mooney, Myers, Williams, and Murray, both who we've been discussing.
Good
and
work.
then Chris Sammy, who unfortunately went on the short-term IR, I believe, today in Washington. So I'm going to open it up. Greg, why don't you kick us off with this one? Who would you go with in the flex spot?
So I think with the risk, obviously Mooney was on the injury report. The Rams are a great defense. I could see the argument for a big play actually on the Cover One Buffalo preview show on Wednesday night. I talked about how my biggest concern was Chase Claypool as an athlete against Levi Wallace, who is a technician but not an athlete, and that if they're going to break a big play, it's Claypool one-on-one with Levi Wallace.
Let me interrupt for 1 minute, Greg. I'm finding the tweet right now because I'm looking at the language again. This is from @SirHamathy on the Twitter. So again, appreciate the question, Sir Hamathy. But it is a standard, and then later you put PPR league. So I think he just means a standard PPR league. So I'm guessing 1 point per PPR. So I was
going to say 12.2 projected for Corey Davis is high for a standard league.
Agreed. I thought the same thing, so I went back to the original tweet that actually has his language, and he just waved.
In ESPN, PPR is not the standard, so it's it's understandable. I'd be in a coin flip there at Claypool or Davis when you're just looking at receivers. I like that he was aggressive in some of his moves. You could tell the last two pickups there were probably waiver pickups, and why Williams and Murray are the last on the list there. So good job picking those up there. I'm not 100% sure I'm ready to start them. If you had to start one, obviously Tyson Williams is the guy you would want to start right off the bat because we don't know how much Murray or Bell or anyone else even knows the playbook to get in there. So I think he's got a pretty decent floor for this week, and the Raiders don't have an intimidating defense. Corey Davis had a really encouraging target share with Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson looked better than what I'm happy about in the preseason. And so I don't think Corey Davis is crazy here. And honestly, I might go with Davis too. I think Williams might have a higher floor because he's going to get volume in what's there. I'm biased about not picking Claypool, but I maybe it would be the upside play. I can't see the rest of his lineup. Maybe if he had some really solid starts everywhere else, you take the upside check because I think Claypool has the highest ceiling of any of those players. Anthony, Rich.
No, Anthony, you can go ahead. I just was, I wanted to make sure that the person's car that was getting broken into was okay.
Dude, it was so loud. Like, I don't know what happened.
Everybody out there, I've personally had some technical difficulties, and hopefully it's not coming over too bad, but my mic we got some weird ghosts in my machine, and now we got a car getting broken into over.
I thought it was just one.
Night.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Like, Friday before football, technology.
And I thought it was just one horn, and I was like, it'll be okay. And then it went off. I was like, oh, no, that's the alarm, and I had to quickly mute. It's tough. I've advocated for Corey Davis exactly to Greg's point. He looked like, if we trace it all the way back to him being drafted, guy with a boatload of talent coming out of the draft, top 10 pick for Tennessee, just never seemed to click, but he's a guy who has the traits and the tools and the measurables. He seems like he's really clicked with Zach Wilson in that offense. You also have the game script in that Jets game. Maybe Carolina's starting to pour it on, and so the Jets are like, okay, Zach Wilson's throwing this ball 40 times.
You mean the Sam Darnold revenge game?
That's exactly what it could be. I think that's legit. I think Carolina's going to come out and want to do some things for Sam Darnold, combined with the fact that the Jets aren't very good. But game script also favors Corey Davis a little bit. The only thing that gives me – so right now I would lean Davis. The only thing that gives me cause for concern is the floor for Tyson Williams against a Raiders defense that I don't think is very good. I think Baltimore runs often and successfully against that Raiders team. So you have a legitimate chance for Williams to get into the end zone and get touches there. And then the big play opportunity, Greg, like you mentioned, for Claypool, I think there's a chance. Yeah, he, catches something over the middle and houses it because of that speed and that athleticism. I'm not comparing him to Tyreek Hill, but we've seen the Bills defense struggle with guys who possess tremendous athleticism, whether it's size and strength or speed, and Claypool has all three of those things. Or if for whatever reason, Najee Harris is starting to work a little bit, and even though the Steelers were terrible at play action last year, Matt Canada likes that play action game. If we get a play action pass, and exactly your point, Greg, Chase Claypool is one-on-one with Levi Wallace, or as much as I love Tre'Davious White, who's tremendously technically sound, there's a chance Claypool could get one on him because of his speed and size. I think that big play potential is there for Claypool. In this instance, though, I would lean Corey Davis, and I like it there. My number 2 would be Williams, and then a close 2A/high 3 would be Claypool. Again, I'm just basing it off of the target share. I think Davis gets the volume and has the higher chance for the upside play. I think Williams offers you volume, but the higher floor. And then Claypool, I think, has the biggest wild card aspect out of everything.
Rich, what is your tiebreaker?
So I'm excited that I think this is going to be an interesting thing throughout the season, especially when we're talking about players that are going against Buffalo, because I think that you guys are going to see things through a red and blue lens, and I'll probably see things through a brown and orange lens, although I tend to be more pessimistic than Greg, so maybe I won't. Maybe I'll crap on my own team a lot more. But I think Claypool is the play here. I think he's just the better talent. I think that over-under's started at 51. For some reason, it went down to 48.5. We're going to talk about bets later. I really like the over, though. Teaser spoiler alert, I like the over in that game. So I think that, while Pittsburgh's offensive line isn't fantastic, didn't you guys just lose Starr in the middle of your lineup for this middle of your defensive line for this game?
One tech is out.
So, again, I don't think that, I still think the Pittsburgh offensive line will struggle. Go ahead, Anthony.
How do you feel? So I'm agreeing with what you're saying for the most part. What do you think of one of the things for Claypool for me is also the volume aspect in an offense with Najee, Juju, Deontay Johnson. Where do you think Claypool falls in that volume distribution in terms of targets? Like, I would think Corey Davis would out target Chase Claypool by a wide margin. Does that factor into your decision at all there?
He could. I mean, he may out target him, but I guess I'm not exactly 100. I guess I don't know that I believe that Zach Wilson is immediately going to go target Corey Davis week 1.
Gotcha. That's
14 times. Like I just, I think Zach Wilson is going to be probably freaking out a little bit. It's his first NFL game.
Oh my God.
I mean, I
trying
think
to figure out what his mom tweeted.
Right, his mom hot, whatever. But he looked pretty decent during the preseason. They're on the road in Carolina. Pittsburgh obviously on the road in Buffalo, but Ben's been there before. Not that I love Ben, but Ben's also similar. I do. I love Pittsburgh, but Ben's similar in my opinion to Brady. I don't know that he sits there and locks on to a particular target. So whether it's Claypool, whether it's Juju, whether it's Deontay had the dropsies a lot last year. To be honest, I mean he just ended up getting the volume down the stretch because he kind of had to. So I don't know. I just feel that Claypool is the better play, the better, more established quarterback, even though I hope I'm completely wrong on that and Ben deteriorates and falls apart this year. But I think week 1, I don't know what I can expect out of Zach Wilson 100%. I would probably just throw in Chase Claypool and assume that he's going to catch, he's probably going to get I think he's going to get that kind of like the Kareem Hunt range, like a 14-point kind of performance. Okay. If he catches a touchdown, he's going to be at 20. Okay. And I don't know for sure. And, the Jets Carolina game, I think is a much lower, it's definitely a lower, I haven't looked at it yet, but it's got to be a lower over under. And I think it's going to be more of a little bit of a slugfest and who knows what's going to happen there. So I would go Claypool. 44.5. So I mean, lower, not crazy low, but lower. I mean, in the NFL today, anything, 42 is like, oh my God, and 38 is like it's defensive matchup, right? So I would go Claypool. So I will go back to our friend on the tweeter, Sir Hamothy, and I will say 2-1 was the vote. Corey Davis to Claypool and let him.
I mean, but you're seeing it through those yellow and black lenses because you're a Steelers guy. So I think that's also a little biased. You're right. I just want to say it.
Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow.
Ooh, little Wiz Khalifa here. Look at that throwback.
So that song is stupid.
It is pretty terrible.
There was so much hate in that statement.
we got a question here in the chat from Nick G, who's been awesome tonight. The question is from a flex: Javonte Williams, Marquez Callaway, or Deebo Samuel?
Ooh,
that's a very even question. I didn't read that. I wasn't.
That's a
great question. It's a very even question. I think I will eliminate one right out. For me, I would eliminate Javonte Williams simply because I don't know that. Again, week 1, they're paying Melvin Gordon a lot of money. I think that he's going to get carries initially.
Yes.
So, and thanks for taking that down, Greg. Appreciate it. So I would probably eliminate Javonte week 1 at least. I think maybe down the road that's a better play.
I might like him the best as an asset season long, and the least week 1.
Good call.
Yes.
That's
so
fine.
I would lean either Callaway or Debo, and to me for me, San Francisco is a weird team. I don't like a lot of the San Francisco players, but I think either one of those are better plays than Javonte. But I eliminated Javonte. So let's move on to, I don't know, Anthony. Or go ahead, Greg.
I'll eliminate one more without another option. Marquez Callaway is getting Jair Alexander the whole game against Green Bay, who is probably the best lockdown takeaway guy in the league right now, the way that they use him anyways, because the Rams don't necessarily use Jalen Ramsey that way the whole time. So I think Marcus Callaway is going to get the toughest man coverage in the NFL right now with Jair Alexander. Not that means he's going to have a terrible game. It's not his best matchup. So from that standpoint, for process of elimination, I would lean Debo for that reason.
That's literally what was in my brain of, like, I think the Saints are going to score against the Packers, and they're going to need to score against the Packers. So initially Callaway, I was like, oh, Callaway. And then I was like, if he draws Jair, that's a very tough thing because Jair is very, very legit. If he draws Kevin King, who doesn't realize that Scotty Miller's going to go deep with 4 seconds left at the end of the first half in the NFC Championship, maybe Callaway would do more things. I'm still not bitter or upset about that.
Could be
whatsoever.
a Traquan Smith game. Could be a Juwan Johnson game.
Could be
just a huge Alvin Kamara game.
Yeah.
I do think that New Orleans is going to have to put up points, and I do think, Jameis showed a willingness to take deep shots, and he could catch one of those.
He for sure
through.
could.
So,
And it's interesting too because Debo, I think the Niners put up points against the Lions. Debo gets a whole bunch of manufactured touches, whether it's screens, whether it's stuff coming out of the backfield as a running back. So for me, I love Rich's point right off the bat. I would eliminate Javonte Williams. I do like him long-term, Greg, to your point, though. I think he eventually takes over that backfield. So for me, it's coming down to Callaway or Debo. Just from that flex aspect, I want to get as much as I can of a floor. I would go Debo Samuel because of the Jair Alexander effect, because Jair is very, very real.
I'm going to mash in another lineup decision question that I have in a league where I had Gus Edwards as a keeper, lost him. I don't really have an obvious answer. I went pretty heavy at wide receiver. I have a similar situation with a San Francisco player and a rookie running back, but it's the same thing. I have Trey Sermon that I like as a long-term asset. I like him a lot going into the season by the end of the year, but I'm actually starting James White over him this week just because I don't know what to expect week 1, and that maybe it's 50-50 with him and Raheem Mostert, or maybe this is just a huge Raheem Mostert game. I like the running attack against Detroit. I think that's a good play. I just don't feel comfortable starting him when I don't know what kind of touches he's going to get, and I do think a healthy Raheem Mostert is more of starter backup than 1A, 1B, whereas like with Kareem Hunt, we know he's going to get touches. We know he's coming in. We know he has a set role. We don't know that when it's a fully healthy Raheem Mostert. We just don't know that Trey Sermon has a defined amount of snaps or role immediately here. So in that same vein with Javonte Williams, I'm in the same spot with Trey Sermon. Rich, any thoughts on? I mean, that's a tough one where I'm banking. I also have Latavius Murray in that one.
Layabouts.
I have layabouts Murray.
Layabouts Murray.
I have one other. I have Justin Jackson, and if Austin Eckler ends up being a late scratch, I'll be able to pop him in there. But that's the kind of I'm scrapping it together in that auction league.
Yeah, and Justin Jackson actually was somewhat effective, when Eckler didn't play. But for me, the San Francisco offense is a very weird one. I've kind of stayed away from it all year just because I find that one very difficult to predict. And I think that, I actually talked about this on one of our previous episodes. I just think Kyle Shanahan name and some of the things he's done in his past, has, I just think that he gets more credit than maybe is deserved a little bit. I don't know that he's been super innovative with the 49ers personally, other than Kittle. Kittle's been great. So he's found the way to get Kittle the ball. But I don't know, I don't know what they're going to get from their quarterback play. So I don't know who's, whether it's Debo or Ayuk or what. I don't know who's going to get the ball necessarily from a San Francisco perspective. And I think Trey Sermon's eventually going to be the guy. So I don't know. I stay away from the 49ers players at the moment. So I'm sorry. What was your other, Justin Jackson? What was the other choice there?
So I have James White is in my lineup currently. Trey Sermon, Justin Jackson, Latavius Murray, Devontae Booker. It's all a bunch of I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire in my RB1 spot, and then a big list of dart throws at RB2. And I'm right now I have James White in there.
I would I'd probably go James White just because we know what you're probably going to get in that role. Even though the quarterback's different, I can't imagine they're not going to try to find a way to get him the ball in the passing game a handful of times. So you're at least going to get some production out of James White, and you hopefully get into that double-digit category. So, I'd probably stick with James White.
And this is one of those leagues where we'll talk about as the year goes when to target depth to trade in other spots in that league. I have Amari Cooper, DJ Moore, Chris Godwin, Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Cooks, Antonio Brown, and no one at RB2. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up going with a nice wide receiver for running back trade at some point here. Yeah. But it's, you're not ready for that week one.
Yeah, Anthony answered this question in chat, but I just want to put his name up because I don't know why I really like the name Clap Nuts. So I just wanted to put that.
You would love that name
up on the screen. So I appreciate the name out of Clap Nuts. Yeah. Do I start Gaskin or Jacoby Myers?
And a nice Kurt Cobain avatar.
Yes, that is a very nice.
That was Kurt Cobain's nickname. What? Kurt Clap Nuts Cobain.
Cobain.
All his closest friends knew that.
But Anthony, I agree with that comment. Gaskin, I think, is kind of a no-brainer over Myers, and I haven't been the biggest Gaskin fan, but I will admit I'm coming around a little bit. On him slightly.
Welcome, guys.
I'm a big Malcolm Brown fan simply because of where you can get him so late in the draft that if Gaskin gets dinged, you're gonna really benefit from that. But I'm coming around. A little bit.
I've had to tweak my mind in the same way to remove the draft's over. So, draft cost is no longer part of the equation.
Sunk cost, right? It's a sunk cost.
So, someone asked me about that with the Jets, and I spent so much time saying, well, hey, if you're giving me a dart throw and Michael Carter's going to the 7th or 8th round, and I can get, Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson in the 13th and 14th round, I'll just keep taking Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson and figure out, hey, maybe I end up lucky and get the starter. Now, if you're asking me now that the draft is done and who would I rather have of those three, of course I'd rather have Michael Carter, the guy that they just invested in as a draft pick, but I don't have very much of him because I never valued him to that point. So I had to kind of retrain my brain to be like, oh yeah, the draft is over. The value at which you got them no longer really matters. Now it's just a bonus. Now it's a roster, and you got to pick the best guys.
I love that argument in early season trade talks. Well, I drafted that guy in the 2nd round.
Doesn't matter.
Man. I don't care anymore where you drafted that guy. And same, I will never go say that to somebody well, I'm not giving you my 1st round pick for a 4th round pick. If it makes sense at that time, the draft is sunk cost. Think about it from an economic perspective. Yeah. No longer matters where you took that player. Obviously, I get it. Give me the 1st round pick up for somebody that picked up somebody on waivers is a weird situation. But other than that,
if Tyson Williams has an awesome first week, don't trade Zeke for Tyson Williams.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Don't overdo it.
But Zeke had a bad week 1, so he's obviously going to be terrible, right?
He's obviously toast.
That's how
Greg. We're getting more questions.
There's
in the chat,
two great questions.
So let's bring those up. And the first one has 2 Bills players in it. So I want your 2 opinions on it first. And then I want to throw this out there. What I'm going to do, and I don't, Greg and Anthony, I haven't even talked to you guys about this. I shot it over to Eric today. I'm going to start writing some pieces on Cover 1 from my perspective about the Bills. I'm a Browns fan. So
what? Wait, you're a what fan?
I'm a Browns fan.
You like the Browns?
I like Baker Mayfield. Where's Romeo at? I like Baker. Romeo. Where's Anthony at? I like Baker Mayfield. You can have a beer with Baker. It's okay. But I'm going to start writing some pieces on Cover 1 just from my perspective. Obviously I'm not credentialed with the Bills, but just my perspective as a rival AFC team. And I'm going to hopefully try to make it unbiased. I like the Bills, to be honest.
That's a great idea. Like an outsider's perspective.
I'm excited about that news.
I don't hate Buffalo, or anything like that. I think the Bills fans are great. I'm happy you guys won the NFL Fox poll. I think our matchup was the Browns versus Bills matchup is that's awesome.
That's what it should be.
But from that standpoint, I do want your opinions first on this question. The PPR second running back, we'll throw it up here from S2K Nate, Javonte, who we've kind of talked about a little bit, or either of the Buffalo Bills running backs, Mr. Singletary or Zach Moss. This is a very tough question.
I'll since Greg, you're in some consternation over there, I'm going to kind of give my out loud thought process of it here. So I think what's tough for me, I want to say, again, from just a pure offensive scoring standpoint, right? Pick the guy in the better offense. I would lean Singletary or Moss. I think one of them has the better chance to fall into the end zone. I think one of them gets more usage. My problem with it is knowing which one of them it's going to be. It could be a Singletary week. It could be a Moss week. You could have some Breida in there. So there's a chance Javonte Williams could outtouch Singletary or Moss. You're almost playing the crapshoot guessing game. And Greg, I mean, you know, you're a Bills guy as I am. Is it crazy in my head that I'm sitting here thinking that Javonte Williams might get more touches than either Singletary or Moss? Like one of them, like either Singletary or Moss is going to get the most, but then I think Javonte, it would be second, and then either Singletary or Moss would be behind him, or am I crazy?
Not only you're not crazy, I actually think it's even a step higher. I think that with the Steelers front seven versus the Steelers defensive backfield, we're going to see a pretty similar game script as we did last night, where people are asking, oh, why did the Buccaneers or the Cowboys pass so much and not run all that much? Well, because that's what the other team's bad at.
So do it.
I will not be shocked if there are 50 runs or 50 passes and 15 runs.
I was going to say 50 runs.
I will be very surprised if there's 50 runs. I will not be surprised if there's 50 passes and 15 runs for the Buffalo Bills against the Steelers, because why would you run the ball at Cam Hayward and TJ Watt and
Tyson Alualu, who's very strong inside.
And why would you run at that? So I honestly would pick Javonte Williams, because I think there's a chance that Singletary and Moss both have 6 carries for 28 yards and 2 catches for 15.
Fair.
If I was going to pick a Bills player, I've been on the Singletary train the whole time. I think he's going to be the 60 of the 60-40 split with Moss. I think Moss can get some touchdowns, but any week, if you ask me who's going to run in a touchdown for the Bills, I'll pick Josh Allen before Singletary or Moss. And Reggie Gilliam got.
I was going to say Reggie Gilliam,
2 short yardage carries in the preseason game and the 2 fourth down conversion carries. So hell if I know who they're giving the ball in short yardage. I'd pick Javonte Williams because I think he gets more touches than either Singletary or Moss.
Oh, I think that's fair. I got no qualms with that. If I knew who was going to be the number, but see, that's even the thing. Even if we knew like Singletary is the number one or Moss is the number one, it's not a running back centric offense. Combined with the game script and game plan against Pittsburgh, it's going to lean even further away from the running back aspect. Yeah, I got no problem saying
this
Javonte
is not the
Williams.
week to place it. There are weeks when the Bills play Houston. Let's mess with Singletary and Moss.
Yeah,
the Steelers is not that matchup.
No, I'm going Javonte as well. Fair enough. Here.
Yeah,
Rich,
no, I agree. I agree with you guys. Even though the over/under in that Denver game is fairly putrid, it opened at 43 and it's down to 41.5. Maybe up,
who did they
depending
play?
where you get it.
The Giants.
They're playing in New York.
That's right. I knew they played someone bad.
But I agree with your assessments. It could be a very similar game script to the game we just watched, where Dallas threw the ball every play basically, and unless you felt that Singletary or Moss, one of them, were going to get a number of catches, which I don't think either of them really do all that often. So yeah, Javonte Williams. Even though I mentioned a few minutes ago that Melvin Gordon is going to get carries because of the amount of money they're paying him. Maybe Javonte, comes in on some of those series and makes the most out of his touches and can find the end zone.
There are a couple Broncos beat guys who have said his time may come sooner than people think. Now, I don't know how much of that is. We joked about the wish casting earlier. I don't know how much of that is kind of projecting what they want to see happen. But there are guys who are close to the team that have said his time may come sooner than people think.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I don't know. I think week 1's probably
I agree.
too soon. But yes, I think at some point Melvin Gordon and hey, Melvin Gordon also is a big part of this trophy, and I always give the credit to Alvin Kamara, but I had Melvin Gordon as a keeper for the beginning of this run when he was good, and I was able to pair him then with Melvin Gordon for a season. So, I mean, but he unfortunately, I think his best years are behind him. Yeah. So we're getting a lot of more questions in the chat. So I'm just going to take over as the host and let you guys kind of run with the answers because I think this is fun. So the next one from we'll put it up here. From let's see here, Kashif, Mustafa, Aaron Rodgers, or Jalen Hurts.
Or the Undertaker.
I already played against CD, and he had Zeke, so that's a problem.
So you got some catching up.
So Aaron Rodgers is obviously Saints, against the Saints in New Orleans on the road, but in the dome.
Actually, it's actually a neutral site.
We have a neutral site. That's right, because of the hurricane.
It's actually played in Jacksonville Stadium.
That's interesting. Great.
Which
point,
is always
Gregory.
a neutral site, even when it's for the Jags home game.
Very true.
We actually have a neutral site.
We actually have a question about the Jacksonville defense in a few, which I'm really excited to talk about Jacksonville's defense. So we'll get to you, Blue Crew, who I unfortunately read you as Blue Chew, which is like Viagra, and it's freaking me out. But go ahead, Blue Crew. So then Philadelphia is playing in the dome
against Atlanta. Yeah.
So we obviously know. So I very outwardly spoken about how I am not a believer in Philadelphia's offense. I'm not a believer in Jalen Hurts. There's reason that you could talk yourself into if you need to hit the home run upside play that you hope for 100 yards rushing and 200-yard passing game from Jalen Hurts against the Atlanta defense. However, I actually think Atlanta's defense is a little better than people think. I think it's going to be slightly improved this year. Bringing Dean Pease back when with the new coach, I'm drawing a blank from Tennessee, Arthur Smith. When Arthur Smith went down there, he brought with some good coaching. They had some weird injury luck there last year. New Orleans is a better defense, absolutely. And he has Devonta Adams. If you're hoping for a big comeback upside play the Rodgers-Adams stack and just hope for a big game. You need a huge game either way. If you need the huge Devonta Adams game, you can't get that without a huge Aaron Rodgers game. Play for the stack and just hope for 2 Devonta Adams touchdowns and an extra one to Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Randall Cobb or Robert Tonyan. But if you're banking on, hey, I need 4 touchdowns, I think you have a higher probability of Rodgers getting those 4 touchdowns than Jalen Hurts, even though I think the Saints defense is tougher than the Falcons defense. Anthony, explain why it has to be Jalen Hurts.
I was going to say Jalen Hurts.
You have to go Jalen Hurts, right?
That's the answer. No, I think it's Aaron Rodgers for me. The only thing that's potentially, unless you get an Aaron Jones touchdown game, and he's the one who's getting, maybe like 2 or 3. And so the Packers put up, 28 to 35 points, but Jones is getting, some of those touchdowns. I think that might work against you, but I like Jalen Hurts a lot, but I'm not putting him ahead of Aaron Rodgers. I still think it's fair to question several things with that Eagles offense, and I believe more in Jalen Hurts than both of you guys do, but I don't believe in him to the point that he's ahead of Aaron Rodgers for me. I think the Packers put up points against New Orleans. I think they're going to have to put up points against New Orleans, and I think they will. I think again we have another year where Aaron Rodgers wants to prove stuff, and he's going to prove stuff because he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and I got no problem, because here's also the way I like to look at it too. If Jalen Hurts goes off, right, but you start Aaron Rodgers, I don't think you really kick yourself for that too much. But if you start Jalen Hurts and then he doesn't do as good and Rodgers goes off, you're going to be furious at yourself because you started Jalen Hurts over the reigning NFL MVP. And again, to your point, you need a big game. I love the aspect of the stack. If you need Devonta Adams to pull up a big game, he's having a big game because Aaron Rodgers had a big game. So roll that stack, go for the upside. And then, a couple weeks from now, we'll see. Jalen Hurts is still in Survivor Series Undertaker debut for Ted DiBiase and the $1 Million Corporation. He's not there yet. Once we get to week 4, week 5, week 6, then we're starting to get to the showdown in Texas show where he beats Hogan for the title, then we'll start to see that level of Undertaker. But he's still just, who is this guy? What's going on? Survivor Series debut Undertaker. We'll get there, but he's not ready yet.
I love that. That is fantastic.
I also love that one of the bigger Jalen Hurts advocates I know. If you're not starting him against the Falcons, I don't know when you're starting him this year.
I am starting him in our super flex. Again, it's all about if you took him. I mean, if you took him in this scenario,
because she explained it here, he has Zeke, he has Devontae Adams. He obviously didn't look like he went quarterback early.
Yeah.
Rodgers was going a little bit later, and then we saw Hurts was falling to the 11th or 12th round. So at some point, the hate I was not a fan of his. At some point, he was going like after Tannehill and after Joe Burrow, and it was like, oh well. I mean, at this point, there is a chance that he runs for 1,000 yards while playing quarterback. Like, it's still worth taking.
That's exactly what the value
you got
was.
Both. That's good value.
Mm-hmm. That's if your number one QB was Hurts, my assumption means, okay, you got him in like the 10th round ballpark, which means you went wide receiver, running back, tight end the first 9 rounds, which I think that's a pretty good thing. And then if Hurts is your guy in the 10th-ish, good stuff. But if you took him as your backup, and that means you got Rodgers or Russell Wilson or somebody like that. And go with the proven commodity. Hurts could blow up, but again, I don't think we're at this point in the season where you should be like, let me put Jalen Hurts over Aaron Rodgers. Maybe, again, mid-season, but not yet.
Yeah, and I think you guys covered it, and I agree with the stack option there, especially if you're in the deficit, and might as well try to swing for the fences there with the home run. So great answers on that. Let's go to the next one because we're getting questions, so I love it. We're going to go back to Clapnuts because I just want to throw the name up there again.
Kurt Cobain.
Do I trade Gaskin and Russell Gage for DeAndre Swift? I'm going to start with this one, and the answer for Anthony Gregg may be surprising, maybe not, but actually, I say no. I say no on this one. I'm not a big DeAndre Swift fan either, to be honest. So, and I don't know. There's weird stuff coming out, and I know Greg mentioned a couple. It came out a couple months ago, really, but he might have murdered somebody.
There was a report. He was involved in a shooting. He's not being investigated, but he was involved.
Yeah, I don't. So I don't know. I mean, Swift could go well, could do well in Detroit, but I think that he was so overhyped for whatever reason. Maybe the whole volume is king thing, he's going to get the ball. But Jamal Williams, again, he's no slouch. He played a very important role in Green Bay. I think he's going to play a role in Detroit. And DeAndre Swift, he gets dinged up and nicked up already a little bit in his early career. So, I don't really love DeAndre Swift. Again, I'm not a huge Gaskin guy either, but you're giving up Russell Gage. I actually think that, and again, I'm going to screw this guy's name up because I've messed up every show, but Olmidi Zacharias, something like that. Zacchaeus. Yes. I think he's going to get a little more, I think he's going to get more targets than we think in Atlanta, but still, who knows? I could be wrong on that. And Russell,
I love how somehow every episode Zacchaeus comes up. Every single episode,
if he breaks out, it's going to be hysterical.
You would always comes up.
You would think that as much as I talk about him, I would learn how to say it.
Okay, at some point,
if you had that for Cover One Fantasy Bingo, who's picking that? He's the name that comes up every episode somehow, some way. How?
I've been trying to fit it in, and I was able to slide it in here with this question. But but I would keep Gaskin engaged.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know how to say this politely. I don't care. I'm not excited about either guy. I like Swift slightly more than Gaskin, but I have him in the same tier. It would be the same thing if you had a chance to also trade for Josh Jacobs. It'd be ugh. I guess I kind of like him, but I don't want to be excited about those guys. I technically like Swift a little bit more than Gaskin, enough that I guess I'd give up Gage to do it. But like Rich said, Miami's offense probably has higher upside than Detroit, so you're purely banking on the prospect that DeAndre Swift was. Because coming out of the draft and the player, the talent, I think DeAndre Swift is a really good player.
Yes.
Man, that offense is a mess. I don't know. Yes. You're banking on he's going to get a ton of passing work while they're losing, and that's just going to rack up to a good, good stats, bad team guy and I think there's a chance that happens. I think Gaskin's in a better situation, more scoring potential, but there's probably more upside in DeAndre Swift that he could hit for a big season. I just don't know how likely it is that that's going to happen. So, in a vacuum, if you ask me, I had a chance for either sides of this trade. Honestly, like 52-48, I'd pick DeAndre Swift, I think, but I don't think it's crazy to just keep Gaskin because he's in a better situation.
Yeah, and just to throw out a little injury there, Swift already was dealing with a little bit of a groin. He was a full participant today in practice. But again, that to me already, I feel like that was the whole case last year. He missed some time and he was dinged up every week and he was always on the injury report. And don't get me wrong, so was Gaskin. So I guess, to be fair, Gaskin had his own injury concerns and people are concerned about his size. But yeah, I guess, Greg, that was a great analysis. I don't know. It's 50. I don't know that it really matters, but
yeah. How about this? Try to trade for someone else. That's my advice. That's my advice is you should try to trade Myles Gaskin or Russell Gage for someone else. Trade him for Mike Davis. Trade him for actually Myles is probably in the same range. I
would take both Gaskin and Davis over DeAndre Swift. I think the difference is negligible. Yeah, I think you could shoot a little. Try and trade them for like Kareem Hunt. Or maybe that's even a little too high, but I think, I think the difference is negligible. I would just stand pat.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to a defense question because
this is a good one.
I don't know that I ever fielded a defensive question in ever.
And this is an awesome one too.
Great, and it is a great question.
Yes.
The next three questions are all tremendous.
Yes.
All three, and then the one comment at the bottom by T Rent, I should say.
From the Blue Crew, who again I in my brain just think of Blue Chew, which if you listen to wrestling podcasts, this is how.
Oh yeah,
Blue Chew is always a sponsor of Bruce Pritchard's podcasts and everything else, and they're like hymns or all the other Roman or whatever. So Blue
Roman,
Crew, I apologize, but I see Blue Chew. So half point PPR, not that really matters.
Maybe they
will.
I would love.
I would love for the Blue Chew to sponsor us. That would be fantastic.
I'd choose some.
I just hit 40. I can at some point. Who knows? 12 team, half point PPR.
Yikes.
Hey, not throw it out there. This needs to be somehow on the Twitter. Greg's reaction needs to be on the Twitter.
Yeah, no,
I'm snippeting this.
We're going to snip it.
12 point PPR or half point PPR. Not that really matters. 12 team. Which defense to start? Pittsburgh this week against obviously the Buffalo Bills, or our friends down in Jacksonville who apparently have no home field advantage or fans or anything of that nature. The resident home of Mango White Claw, although it's not in Jacksonville, it's in Houston this week against the Houston Texans. So over unders 45.5 in the Jacksonville-Houston game, and as I think we've already talked about, 48.5 looks like ish in the Buffalo-Pittsburgh game.
So this is the perfect example of real life versus fantasy, and that the Pittsburgh Steelers obviously have a far, far better defense than the Jacksonville Jaguars. However, what you're looking at in these two games are both teams are on the road, so you eliminate that. I always try to lean on a home team when you have defense. There's just positive elements there of the penalties, the crowd noise, all the different things that offenses can't do. Then you want to look at the over-under. Then you want to look at who's favored. Well, you have the lower over-under, and you have one team is favored by 3, while the other team is a 6.5 point underdog. As crazy as it sounds, I don't even think this is that difficult. I think this is pretty easily the Jacksonville Jaguars as the lower over-under, as a 3-point favorite against the Houston Texans, who no one can convince me are not the most aggressively tanking team we've seen in a while. Pittsburgh is a much more talented defense. TJ Watt could take over the game and do crazy stuff. Yes. They could make big plays at any point. Well, you want to know what? So could Josh Allen. Josh Allen, the edge rusher for the Jaguars.
Yes. Miles Jack.
So could Miles Jack. There are talented players there who could create a big play and do something. So the names tell you Pittsburgh. All the analysis tells you Jacksonville. I would comfortably take Jacksonville if I had to start one.
Yeah, I would look at your waiver wire and see if the Carolina Panthers are available and take them against the New York Jets.
Yeah, Brian Burns. I like Brian Burns against the Jets. I like that.
Burns, Chin, and I think J.C. Horn is fantastic. I would look for a flyer on the waiver wire against – I would literally look for the Carolina Panthers. If you had to stick with these two, if these are your only options, I would lean towards Jacksonville. If Pittsburgh wins this game, it's because they forced turnovers. They got sacks on Josh Allen. And whether those turnovers are picks or strip sacks or something like that, I just don't know if that's necessarily in your favor. I think you have the opportunity to get some sacks, potentially some takeaways, and a lower point total for the Texans offense. So I would lean Jacksonville for this week, but honestly, I don't love either, and I would check that waiver wire for a better matchup.
We talked about some of the pairings and strategies for things. This is not a great week for streaming defenses because all of the best matchups are also with good defenses. The Rams are playing the Bears. The 49ers are playing Detroit. The Broncos are playing the Giants. All those defenses were drafted. People drafted the Ravens and the Broncos and the Rams and the 49ers. So the streaming options, honestly, the two best ones are the Panthers and, crazy as it sounds, the Jaguars. Like it's just that you're going to be able to stream against the Texans every week. It's just a backdrop. It doesn't really matter who it is. They're not going to put up a ton of points against anybody.
Yeah, guys, great great discussion, great analysis, and I agree, and I use a site. I will not name this site because it's one of my secret sites, so I won't give away the site. But from a projection standpoint, and we're assuming kind of your normal defensive stats, right? Whatever. But Jacksonville is actually the fifth ranked defense this week, and this particular site has the Steelers down at 23.
Oh, that's no good.
Yeah.
So,
how about this? Another one. If you're looking for a upside, non-traditional play in like a DFS league, and you want to pick one that's probably cheap because of the default rankings and not going to be that highly played, Jacksonville is probably a good variance play. Like if you want to just say like, hey, if they have a crazy defensive touchdown and I get a bonus that a lot of other people aren't going to get, Jacksonville is probably a decent defense DFS play.
Yeah, and Anthony, huge props on the Carolina call because you have no idea what site I'm talking about, and the Carolina defense is ranked number 2 on the site for this week.
Look at me.
So excellent analysis, Anthony. Some other defenses there. So Blue Crew, thanks for the question. Obviously, I think we're all going Jacksonville. We're leading Jacksonville for that particular question. But some other defenses out there this week that I don't think are widely owned that I feel are good outside of Carolina. In Jacksonville, the Chargers, which is weird. You would think the Chargers get drafted more, but I've been in many leagues where the Chargers don't get drafted, which is strange.
Bosa coming back, Derwin James coming back.
They're at Washington. They're at Washington. I think people love the Fitzmagic thing, but I don't know. I mean, Fitzmagic can throw picks, so whatever. As long as you don't have some weird league where you're going to get murdered if you give up some points. And some leagues get really crazy with negatives over a certain point threshold. If it's all about turnovers, and sacks, then the Chargers are a good one. And actually the Vikings at the Bengals as well, because again, who knows what's going to happen there. So, I think the Vikings is another defense that you can maybe take a look at if you need to make a pickup for week 1 and you're looking for some defenses that probably weren't drafted. Those are two others that I kind of like as well. So let's go to Taylor. Yeah, Taylor, I think this is also a good question. Very, it's a very even question, I would assume. So Mike Davis versus Daryl Henderson. We've talked a little bit about Mike Davis, throughout this show and even, previous shows. Atlanta, we've talked a little bit about Atlanta already tonight. We have not really talked much about the Rams versus the Bears. So maybe let's start with our thoughts on Daryl Henderson this week. And who would like to jump on Daryl Henderson first?
You want to lead off, Anthony?
No. Yeah. I hope he does well. We have him in our FFPC team, and we need him to do well. That would be nice if he did that. I think this is a really interesting one when Taylor put this up. Taylor, who's a regular fan of Cover One and watcher of all the shows. So shout out to Taylor for joining us here and posing some good fantasy questions. Ooh, I like the Rams offense more than I like the Falcons offense. But I like the Bears defense more than I like the Eagles defense. And I think that is a larger difference than it is between the Rams offense and the Falcons offense. I don't really think you can go wrong either way. Philly's defense doesn't look good. Mike Davis looks like he's going to get a bunch of volume and a bunch of burn. I think he has a decent amount. I think he has maybe the end zone capabilities, again, I'm fleshing these ideas all out loud as we speak. I think the touchdown capability is really what I am trying to decide on right now. Who has the higher opportunity to get into the end zone? I will also say Mike Davis probably ends up with more catches, more targets. I think I'm leaning Mike Davis here, but it's closer than I think from what I said, it shows that it's close, but I think it's close. I would lean like 54-46 Mike Davis, maybe 52-48. I think it's close, but I'm going to lean Mike Davis. I like the offense combined with the matchup, combined with the usage and potential target share in the passing game. But if you choose Daryl Henderson, I don't think that's a bad option. Like, I think this is a fun option to have if you're really deciding.
I think they're both startable players. I think you're in decent shape. If I had to choose, the Bears had to make some tough choices this offseason. They chose to move on from Akeem Hicks and from Kyle Fuller and others in the secondary.
I was like, they got rid of Akeem Hicks. I thought he was just there. You made me take a giant pause.
So he's they kept more of the front seven. They still have Khalil Mack. They still have Akeem Hicks. They still have more of the front seven. I actually think they're going to be vulnerable in the secondary. I think this could be a big Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods week. So I like Daryl Henderson. I think you still start him because I don't think Chicago is like a team that you bench someone against. But I feel a little bit more comfortable with the volume and the matchup against the Eagles. So I'd slightly go Mike Davis as well, but I don't think you're in a bad spot with either guy.
Yeah, agree. We'll keep this one quick. I think I lean Mike Davis from as long as it's a PPR league. From the PPR perspective, I think he's going to be more of a factor in the passing game. So, Anthony, you mentioned that as well a little bit, just his catching ability. And now that Daryl Henderson has Sonny Michel potentially to deal with, we don't exactly know how that's going to work out with the Rams. And I know Wayne Gallman's there in Atlanta now, but I don't know. I'm Wayne Gallman. So I think I would lean Davis. I know it's not, I'm going to go a little higher than Anthony's 50. I'm going to go 62.
Ooh, 62-38.
Nice number.
Decisive. For Mike Davis. 60. So one more question. From T Rent, because I think that's our last question we have in the chat, and then we're going to actually pivot to some betting discussion, and we'll do a quick weather channel situation, and then we'll pivot to some to some betting discussion. So T Rent threw up a trade here. He traded Saquon Barkley and Myles Gaskin for AJ Brown, Allen Robinson, and Miles Sanders. Good or bad trade? I'll kick this one off because I've been having you guys kick off the last couple. So obviously, we don't have specifics from T-Rent. So I don't know if T-Rent, if you're still out there, if you want to give us specifics like PPR or, anything like that. It's always hard to originally, analyze trades if we don't know some of those details. But I'm going to assume this is a PPR league because I'm assuming everything these days
are people don't
PPR.
tell us, we're going to assume 12-team redraft PPR.
Right, exactly. Great point, Greg. So, and I'm going to assume that if you're even considering trading Barkley and Myles Gaskin, you have some other, or I traded Barkley and Myles Gaskin. So I'm going to assume that you had some other running back that's unnamed that was roughly startable.
Yes. That's my biggest question. Like is Miles Sanders your one now or your two? So who's the one?
So I guess in a complete vacuum, not knowing your roster makeup, in a complete vacuum, I like AJ Brown, Allen Robinson, and Miles Sanders, and I'm sure Anthony and Gregory are absolutely shocked that I would pick the trade with two receivers of that caliber over Saquon Barkley, who I've crapped on for 17 hours of show to start the year. So, yeah, I mean, I just think, again, depending on roster makeup, again, I assume you needed some wide receivers. I assume you had somebody else playable at running back. It was a PPR league, and I think just past, I just think that the question marks around Barkley, you don't even know if he's fully playing week one already. So Barkley's a hell of a talent. Our friend Samantha Praviti loves his quads, but I just can't get around. I just can't get around to putting a lot of eggs in the Barkley basket. So I love that trade, for receiving Brown, Robinson, and Miles Sanders. I think Sanders and Gaskins are probably similar-ish players there, so you're not really losing much from that standpoint. I think the upside or the difference in Brown and Robinson, again, assuming you maybe needed a wide receiver and assuming PPR, I would take that side of the trade.
Yeah, I'm going to make an interesting assumption and think that this team that he has shook out like one of Greg's teams, where Greg got Alvin Kamara in the first round and Saquon Barkley in the second. I'm wondering if, I don't know, he got Aaron Jones in the first, or Austin Eckler, or some running back that he took in the first round.
I'm going to assume it was around the turn, and that he also has Antonio Gibson.
There you go.
Harris,
he did some kind of double.
Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones.
Yep, he did that RB dip in the first 2 rounds, which if that's the case, I like this deal even more. But yeah, I'm with Rich 1,000% in a vacuum, just what it is. I like Myles Gaskin a pretty decent amount. I like Barkley if he's healthy and there's no question marks, but there's a significant amount of question marks from a health perspective, and not even just that. The Giants' offensive line looks terrible. There's questions about Danny Dimes. Kenny Golladay is banged up again. Like there's a scenario where things work out for the Giants and they have a fun, explosive offense. I think it's almost equally likely that there's a scenario where the offense is a dumpster fire and they are just resetting everything after this offseason. I love A.J. Brown. I really like Allen Robinson. And if Miles Sanders is your 2 or potentially your 3, but I'm guessing more of your 2 to pair with a legit RB1, and then you're rocking A.J. Brown and Allen Robinson as your wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, I just think the value – this is another one too. We talked about earlier the trade talk that led off with the Kamara for Najee and CEH. And here we go. We got some more details that came in. I'm going to click it right there and put it up. So Sanders is my main back right now, but I have Damian Harris, Greg Tompsett is a fan of that, at second for now. Wow. Hopkins at receiver and OBJ, and have OBJ and Deontay Johnson looking to trade for another running back. Got myself in. Yeah, you need to trade for this. I think this is the direction of the show right now. It's a half PPR, and you should trade for a legit RB1. You've got DeAndre Hopkins, OBJ, Deontay Johnson, Allen Robinson, and AJ Brown.
You should see if you can trade for Saquon Barkley.
T-Rent. No, do not trade for Saquon Barkley because he's stupid. T-Rent, is it a 3? Like, give us real quick if you're still paying attention. So it's 0.5 PPR. Is it 3 wide receivers and a flex? Is it 2 wide receivers and a flex? Because that certainly would matter. If it's 3 wide receivers and a flex, honestly, guys, this is my burner account, and I'm just.
I was gonna say, are you sending us messages?
I'm typing on the side.
Hopkins, AJ Brown, Allen Robinson is fantastic, and then you have Deontay Johnson are playing matchups with Johnson or OBJ as the flex. You're in good shape. There's a couple things I want to just clarify quickly on
2 wide receivers and a flex. Yeah, okay. So 2 wide receivers and a flex. That's a little.
I'm gonna veto this. This was not a good trade.
Yeah,
and the reason that it wasn't is because not liking Saquon Barkley is different than acknowledging the fact that obviously his rookie year when he had 2,000 yards from scrimmage and 15 touchdowns and he won people leagues was ridiculous. His next year where he was a disaster and everybody hated him, he had 1,441 yards from scrimmage in 13 games. That in this season is on pace for 1,884 yards from scrimmage. He is their offense.
Yeah,
he's their entire offense. So his the whole idea of getting him is that there just are so few players and running backs specifically that are the centerpiece of their offense that are the first, second, and third down back. That 1,441 yard season that was disappointing was with the same shambles of an offensive line and crappy offense. It's not worse now. It's maybe not better, but it's not worse. So not drafting Saquon Barkley this is the opposite of the Michael Carter and Jets situation before. I think we didn't like Saquon Barkley at the value he was going at because in the moment we could have taken Alvin Kamara or Devontae Adams or even Nick Chubb or Joe Mixon or other people like that. That's different than saying we don't want Saquon Barkley as a fantasy asset. Yes, you do. You want Saquon Barkley as a fantasy asset. There's a pretty good chance that he's going to be a top 10 running back and that there's just not that many guys who are going to get the touches that he's going to get in the season.
I think he should trade for an RB1.
Yes, I will play devil's advocate to your devil's advocate, and I will say I like the trade because now what I would do is I would go package some of those assets you just acquired and go get somebody that I think is going to be healthier than Saquon Barkley or at least makes me more warm and fuzzy inside. Saquon Barkley doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy and cozy and snuggly at all.
Take Miles Sanders, Deontay Johnson, and Odell Beckham Jr. and package the three of them to get you a running back. So you still have DeAndre Hopkins, A.J. Brown, and Allen Robinson as your three receivers. You still have Damian Harris because he's fantastic. And so your goal is to now take Miles Sanders, Deontay Johnson, Odell Beckham Jr., and trade for...
Go buy low on Zeke Elliott.
Yes. Seriously, send an offer of those three for Zeke Elliott right now.
Go buy low. And I don't even love Zeke Elliott, but I have less concern injury-wise with him. Go buy low on Zeke Elliott and then roll with Zeke Elliott, Damian Harris, those three wide receivers, and have a good time.
Look at that.
And you're welcome.
Fantastic work.
Then I don't know what this butterfly does, but it does something.
So I will say, to Rich's point, if you can now flip, the trade you made was good value in a vacuum.
Right.
It only is going to work out for your team if you can make another trade. Because having two good receivers on your bench
does you no good.
Doesn't do you any good in this spot. So if you can now pivot that, because you made a good trade from an asset management standpoint, if you can now make another move, you could really turn this into something exciting.
Yeah. And this we got to move on, but this is a comment that kind of drives home, Greg, your point on Saquon.
Oh, yeah.
He's this person, SS Austin's all in on Saquon. He dropped me in the second. Well, yeah, okay. If you have CMC and he drops to you all the way at the end of the second round, I'm assuming you took CMC 1 or even 2, whatever.
Like the one where I got him in the main event at pick 21. I got him at pick 21.
Value.
Where at that point, I was like, all right.
Yeah. So, yeah, even at that point, I'm like, okay, yeah, I could be completely wrong on Saquon Barkley. I'm going to take the stab at everything Greg just said from a volume perspective. I still just get worried about his injury history and just the Giants' offense overall. But, yeah, I'd be all in on Saquon Barkley, too, if I got him at the end of the second round and I paired him at CMC. So, thanks for the comment, Austin. And T-Rent's going to try to make that exact trade. And I would love to find out, T-Rent. Talk to us on Twitter about the other suggestions.
Get us on
Sports, at Greg Tompsett, at pro__ant. And get us on Twitter, and we will give you some more options at the running back position.
I've got a couple in mind already.
But, Gregory, I know we're running out of time here. We're going long. We were like, I don't know if we're going to have content tonight. And
the chat was awesome. We had a ton of great
an hour and 41 minutes, which is fantastic. One thing I just want to bring up real quick, and then we get into some NFL betting discussion real briefly, because I think during the season, it's going to be fun. We're going to talk about NFL bets. We're going to put our bets out there and kind of, keep a record and all that kind of stuff. Not that we are by any means proclaimed professional bettors, but it's always fun to put your money where your mouth is, and we like to talk about it. But just this weekend, just real quick, I'll play Weatherman. I'm going to do this, I think, every week. We'll talk about weather a little bit. Week 1, there's really zero issues from a weather standpoint that I can see as of this particular
segment
moment.
That's
segment
great.
Over.
But you don't want to assume that. Yeah, you don't want to assume that. You want to check it.
So, we're literally domes, or I think, honestly, Buffalo, Pittsburgh looks like maybe the worst weather at 72 in overcast, which is,
that's everything, football weather.
So
I like
everything
that.
Good.
Not that it's worse versus better. You almost need to be careful the other way around early in the season. So, like when teams are in Miami or in some of the more heat, sultry, hot places that are super humid, which weirdly looks like maybe the Kansas City is somehow the hottest game.
You're right.
This week.
Yes, which is a great point, because last night in the Bucks Cowboys game there was quite a bit of cramping, and I think it was only 81 or 82.
Yeah.
And humid. So 90. Yeah. So 90 in Kansas City. Not that you're going to make lineup changes based on potential cramping. But, it's something to keep in mind, I suppose.
I also look at the miles per hours for the wind as well. If you're a guy who's looking at kickers or thinking about what to do for what, look at that miles per hour.
Nothing. I mean, I'm really worried about the 16-mile-per-hour wind in the dome in Indy, personally.
That is interesting.
There could be some cracks in the foundation, maybe, and the wind gets through, creates a bit of a tunnel effect inside. Potentially. I got a guy on the inside who helped build Lucas Oil Stadium, and he says there's some cracks there, and I'm pretty well connected, so
poor foundation.
Yeah, poor foundation.
But yeah, so we'll, obviously we'll keep as the season progresses, I think that's going to be a more interesting segment where we can talk about potential weather. And if you want to start or sit guys, if it's raining, I know last year, again, got super windy. Baker was affected by that from the Browns, quite a few games.
Yeah.
And, obviously later in the season, both Cleveland and Buffalo for a lot of our listeners are, obviously, weather cities with snow and all that kind of stuff. Gassy fans in Indianapolis equals windy. Omega outlier. Love you. All right, let's go into a quick betting segment, gentlemen. Talk about some of our bets. And I know, Greg, you've already tweeted out a few of yours. I'm going to tweet some of mine out this weekend. I think, Anthony, you mentioned you were going to do that on Sunday morning. That's kind of when you liked to do it. But I haven't, Greg, I tried to not look. You sent it to our text, our group text. I was like, I don't want to look at your bets. I don't want to I don't want to just be influenced by them for the show. So I'll just throw my first one out there because I talked about it already. I personally, Anthony left. Oh, he's coming back. I personally really love the over in the Buffalo-Pittsburgh game. It opened at 51, and maybe tell me if I'm wrong here. Maybe there's something as a Buffalo insider that I don't. But it opened at 51, and it's dropped down to 40.5. Looks like it actually went all the way down to 48. Looks like it's come back now to 48.5. And I just personally, the weather's going to be fine. I personally can't imagine a scenario where that game's not like 31-24 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything. There's no like weird injury thing or weird weather thing. I don't know why this moved by 3 points. That doesn't make any sense to me. 51 makes more sense to me. I picked it right in that range, and I think that if you told me this game ended 31-28, 31-27, I wouldn't be shocked. But I picked it at 31-21. I take that back. I think I picked it at 34-24 with 58 points, and that I thought the Bills would win by 10, and I had it as 58 for the over/under. So I think the over is a really sound bet, and I'm a little confused why it's going down. I don't know that I see that myself.
Yeah, I'd second that notion. I think there's still questions with the Bills defense, and I think Pittsburgh could potentially put up points. And I think the way the Steelers, the injuries they've got, I think Stephon Tuitt is a real big one, the potential health of returning Devin Bush, but also what they do in the secondary and from a coverage perspective. I think the Bills are going to be able to move the ball and score, and I think Pittsburgh will, even worst case scenario, potentially put up some garbage time points if things really got out of control. But I think, I like the over in that aspect as well, especially if it continues to lower, to Greg's point.
Nice.
All right.
Nice. I like it.
All right, Greg, what's one of your picks you're really looking at this week?
I put all my picks out there, but I had 4 of them that I liked the most. It's easy to pick favorites and to go through there. So there's a couple that I like the underdog. Even they're kind of close, so I actually like them just as a money line bet. The first one is Arizona at Tennessee. You're getting 2.5. But I'd rather take the plus 133 for them as an underdog just to win outright in Tennessee. I am not a believer in Tennessee's defense. I think that they made some weird investments on the offensive side that made sense without addressing anything on defense. And Bud Dupree does not count as an investment to me. So I like Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins to go into Tennessee and to pull an outright victory. So I have that one as one of my favorites. I picked it 28-24 Arizona. I did pick the over, but it doesn't need to be. But that's another fair over bet where I don't know that either defense is fantastic. But I actually think Arizona's defense is a little underrated in how Isaiah Simmons started to play down the stretch last year, how they can now use Zayvon Collins, Isaiah Simmons, and Budda Baker all as movable chess pieces. And then I know, sometimes people roll their eyes, but getting back Chandler Jones and healthy J.J. Watt, I don't know that they're getting 17 games out of either of them. They're both healthy on Sunday.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Like, J.J. Watt's playing right now. So
at any time where he's playing, he is still an impactful player and makes an impact on the field. So that's one of my favorite plays right now is Arizona over Tennessee to outright win as an underdog.
Awesome. Anthony, do you have any picks this week already that you're interested in throwing some cash down?
Sticking with from an over-under perspective, I was there with Arizona and Tennessee. I like the over for that as well. I think if Tennessee beats Arizona, it's because they put up like 30 points, and I think Arizona's a pretty safe bet to put up 24 to 30 points themselves. I think this could easily be, like to Greg's point, 28-24, you're already looking at 52. I think you could have the potential for this to be like a 35-31 even type of thing, depending on who gets out in front first, or who, especially if Arizona gets out to a faster start and Tennessee has to keep pace and Tannehill has to throw a lot, which he can do very well, which people don't realize or think about. And he has to throw to AJ Brown and Julio and Josh Reynolds and Ferkser and that whole crew. I think that's a good one. And then if we're just looking at spreads, Denver is a 3-point favorite against the Giants. I think that's easy money. I like that a lot. I think Denver is a team, the AFC West as a whole, I think is getting slept on because of the Kansas City Chiefs. But if Teddy Bridgewater can be a thing, Denver can make some noise. But regardless of that, what Denver did getting Fuller from Chicago, and then they have Ronald Darby, who's their third corner, because they got Patrick Surtain the second in the draft, with a returning Von Miller and Chubb.
Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson is a fantastic safety duo.
Good safety tandem. They have one of, I mean, again, you're projecting what Surtain could do. They have one of the best secondaries in the NFL, combined with one of the best edge rushing tandems in Chubb and Von Miller. I like that defense a lot, and I don't really like what's going on with the Giants right now.
All with Vic Fangio making the calls.
Yes, a guy who is known for his defense, and this is a make or break year almost for Vic Fangio, and he's got his horses back. And I know the whole West Coast team going east, yada, yada. I don't think it plays too much in week one in this aspect. I'd even like the Broncos by 10. I think this is a game where you're looking at like 27-13 or maybe 23-10, something like that. I love the Broncos at -3, and I don't know why it's that low.
So one interesting thing to point out, and again, I don't think any three of us are necessarily experts on betting. However, we've done quite a bit of it in our lives, so we kind of know what that's going on.
I'm an expert at betting. I'm not an expert at like the winning of the betting.
Yes,
I'm an expert at placing bets.
I've had some good seasons where I've hit, in like the 65% range, which is, you're doing well. I've also had some seasons where I've hit like literally 50-50 and lost juice. So I can
place bets with the best of them.
But one thing to consider, now that we're talking about bets and bet segments, is usually speaking, at least half of the home dogs hit on any given week.
Good point.
So now, I agree with Anthony what you just said. I don't know that the Giants are the home dog I'd be wanting to pick there, but just kind of looking through. So Houston, home dog to Jacksonville, 3.5, depending on where where you're placing your bets. You got the Colts home dog against the Seahawks -3. The Bengals home dog against the Vikings. Getting
the Colts could be a sneaky one.
Colts could be a sneaky one.
One of my remaining ones is a sneaky one that you have to hold your nose to take, but I still like it.
Okay. All right. This one might be it, and we'll see. Anytime you have a lot of points, I get interested. So Detroit getting 8.5 against the 49ers. Don't like Detroit, but I also, like I said earlier, I don't know what the heck to expect out of the 49ers. So more than a touchdown, home dog. You have the Giants, who we just talked about, getting 3 from Denver, and the Saints 3.5 from Green Bay. And then the Raiders getting 3.5 or 4, depending on where you're looking. I have like 6 different sites up, 3.5 or 4 from the Ravens. So, week one is, I think, a little bit strange sometimes. It doesn't always follow the usual rules of sports betting, but most of the time, half of those home dogs on most weeks are going to hit.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a ton that stand out, they're like, I think, Anthony, your pick, of Denver is one where I definitely agree with you. So, I would cross the Giants up. So 3 of those other ones are hitting. 3 or 4 of those other ones are hitting.
And obviously I wouldn't touch Detroit money line, but if you're telling me that they hung around more than other teams, I could see that being a San Francisco win, but closer than it should be, in Detroit covers. There's a few of those where you could talk me into that, where it's the one that is, I think, most narrative driven is Minnesota and Cincinnati. I think that people are like, oh, well, Zimmer restocked the cupboard with new talent in the secondary for Minnesota. Well, yeah, but it's whatever's left of Patrick Peterson and Rashad Breeland. Did they even get better at corner than what they had last year? And everyone's like, oh, well, look at all the drops Jamar Chase had. Well, yeah, they still got T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Like Jamar Chase was kind of a bonus in adding into what they're doing there. I'm a believer in Cincinnati more than most people. This is going to go very, very right or very, very wrong early on. I like Cincinnati as a money line to win at home. It's in Cincinnati. They're getting anytime it's in that point. This is a tough one because you can get the hook. You can get 3.5 points. Getting the half is really nice, but getting plus 150 is nice. And I actually think they're just going to win outright. So I'm not a believer in Minnesota. I think that they were going the wrong direction last year and added older players. I'm not sure why they're going to get better than what they had last year. The talent they had is still there. I think they'll still have some good offensive games. I think this could be a shootout that's there. I'm not a believer in their defense, and I think that Cincinnati can put up some points on them, especially passing the ball. And I just don't know who's going to guard their receivers with what's left of the guys they signed in their secondary.
Well, this is very interesting, and I had no idea because I just brought up the whole home dog thing off the cuff because it's something that you always look at as a gambler. But I love the fact that you just took the Bengals because one of my selections of the week actually was the Vikings, which is hilarious.
Nice, that's fun.
So I obviously think we should put lunch on this. I know Anthony didn't like my lunch bet when it was Christian Kirk versus Randall Moore.
Randall Moore. Yeah.
Oh, I will. I do not forget.
Yeah. Cincinnati.
So obviously we will DoorDash each other lunch. Yeah. So you have the Bengals +3. I have the Vikings -3. A push as we give each other a high five, whatever.
I like it. I like it.
So I just cannot. The Bengals are still the Bengals, and I can't get past their offensive line. And everything you just said about the Vikings defense makes sense, but I still think they have enough firepower on offense. And you know that I'm a believer in Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
And with Jefferson and Thielen and Dalvin Cook, I think that they're gonna get the win. And maybe it ends up being a push. Honestly, maybe it ends up being a win by a field goal. But
I could see 27-24, something like that. And
the Burrow is gonna get. Who knows? Again, that offensive line will fail him. I feel at some point early on in this game. So I think the Vikings cover in this one. But I love the fact that you picked the Bengals and it was totally unscripted, and that's fantastic because now we can bet lunch on it legitimately, and it'll be a good time. And I'd be more than happy to send you a fantastic DoorDash meal if I lose.
I'm looking forward to it. It's I agree. Yeah, I think that it's in early in the season, to exactly what Rich said. There's probably some logic to simply taking all of them because home dogs don't hit because they're the ones that are logical. It's because a lot of them, and obviously Scott Van Pelt famously, has brought gambling more into the regular sports vernacular, and now it's everywhere. But always, they would talk about the hold your nose games, like that. Hey, it doesn't sound fun. This isn't going to look right, but they're going to hit. And if you go and, maybe it is the Giants. I don't think it's going to be. Maybe it is Detroit. I don't think it's going to be. Maybe it is Houston. I don't think it's going to be. Maybe it is New Orleans, but I don't think it's going to be. Some of those are going to hit. Yeah. Some of them are. And that you just don't have all those home. Everybody loves the Chargers. Well, maybe Washington just wins at home.
Honestly, one that's interesting, and this is maybe Browns fan with brown and orange glasses, so I'll admit that. But Baltimore's struggling injury-wise right now. They are struggling, and I don't love Vegas, but they got to go across the country after 2 huge injuries to that team with Gus Edwards and Marcus Peters, and they already are dealing with injury problems. So, I don't know. I think that's certainly a situation where maybe they pull that game out, they squeak it out on the road, but they don't cover. They're getting 4. They're getting more than the field goal. So maybe the Raiders are one of those home dogs to kind of take a peek at based on the shambles that kind of Baltimore's in currently, and they kind of stick around in that game and make it close. And obviously Browns fan hopes they pull it out and wins money line, but I think that they can maybe keep it within that 4.
Absolutely.
So. Anthony, maybe one more from you, and then we're hitting the 2-hour mark on a show that we didn't know would last that long. So
yeah, right. Who would have thought that when we initially came in? We were like, well, what does the content look like for here? I'm starting to run through a couple of them. This is you mentioned it. The Chargers Redskins one, Washington football team, which is basically almost like a pick 'em at this point. Yeah. I'm very, very torn. Like I would stay away from this one if we're betting. Like that's like the Broncos one is my like hard take that I like from a points perspective. That Titans Cardinals game is one from an over under. I would stay away from the Chargers Washington game. I could see this going either way, exactly to the points we mentioned earlier with like the Chargers defense as a defensive recommendation. I could see Fitzy turning it over like 3 or 4 times. I could also see him putting up like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and them doing really well. Like I could see Justin Herbert doing Justin Herbert things. Or maybe the Washington front 7 is just monstrous again and Chase Young has 3 sacks. Like there's so many variables in this game, even just from a points from a pick'em perspective, let alone spread over under. That scares me. I'm staying away from that game in almost every sense of the word.
I think in this one, Anthony, weirdly, Eckler, like running backs usually don't move the line, and Eckler won't. But if Eckler plays, I actually think the Chargers are going to win that game. If Eckler doesn't play, I think Washington wins that game.
I'm worried about his health. Like even if he plays, is he cool? Was it just straight maintenance and he's fine and it's whatever, or is he being held out because of like an actual injury or something they have to monitor? That there's so much variability in that game. And I also think what's an interesting one for people to look at, I wanted to pull up to make sure I wasn't crazy. The Dolphins-Patriots game. Pats are the home team. They're a 3-point favorite. I like New England to cover that, and I don't know why. I feel like I shouldn't, but I like New England at home coming out. They've traditionally had Miami's number in that aspect. I think they give Tua some problems. I also think the Patriots defense is a potential sneaky play for a defense perspective from fantasy in week 1. But yeah, my other big takeaway, stay away from Chargers, Washington. I think there's too many variables and it scares me.
I love it. All right. Awesome show tonight. This was a ton of fun. Obviously went crazy longer than what we thought, so it was great with all the questions and engagement, everything that we had. And this is what we're going to try to do as the season comes closer. We're going to go through, be able to try to answer your start-sit questions, go through potential trade offers, help you identify where to go, look at the matchups that are coming up, talk about it from a gambling standpoint, one, for advice for it, but also on how that impacts the kind of players you should be looking for, the matchups you should be looking for, the areas from a game script standpoint to try to help you lean into or away from certain matchups. So really looking forward to it. Anthony, where can the good people find you if they want to hear more of your sage wisdom?
Oh, my sage wisdom. I love how you put that. You can find me on the old Twitter at pro__ant, pro2_ANT. You can find me obviously here on Cover One Fantasy, and then a lot of other places. You can find me as the host of Disguised Coverage on the Cover One Network. Previously at Thursdays on 9 p.m., but now moving to Wednesdays at 7 p.m. So time TBD, fancy. Schedule changing that a little bit. Yep, fancy. And then you can also find me joining you, Mr. Gregory Tompsett and Mr. Aaron Quinn on the Cover One postgame. So you'll find me with you two fine gentlemen as my voice starts to crack for whatever reason is going on right now. I'm going through puberty again. Yeah, live this Sunday.
Congratulations.
You know, you grow up so fast, and you know, I'm hoping with the change in the voice and puberty, my beard will start to fill in a little bit, and I'll be a real boy soon. And you know, I'm looking forward to that.
And Rich, where can the good people find you?
Obviously at Burn River Sports on the Twitter. I know like SS Austin and a few other folks had questions in the chat that we were unable to get to. So please, by all means, we love to interact on Twitter. So you can, tag all three of us, hashtag #AskCover1. It's kind of the thing we're trying to get going on that. So, please ask us questions on Twitter. We'd love to interact there as well, not just on the particular, the episodes of the podcast. Although, it is obviously we can talk fluidly about your questions on the podcast, and, Twitter is limited by characters, but please interact with us on Twitter. Also, as mentioned earlier in the show, I think I'm going to start to do some articles on a regular basis on cover1.net about the Bills from my perspective as a Browns fan, and maybe some gambling pieces, things of that nature. Or maybe even some Browns pieces. I don't know. We'll see. I know I was talking to Eric with Cover One, and he's like, "Man, do whatever you want." So, but I think in my opinion, I know from my perspective, as a Browns fan, I often like to read pieces not from like the Browns beat writer or the Browns podcaster. I like to see what a national guy says or what somebody else is saying from another city that is, not completely biased. So I don't really read the Pittsburgh stuff because they're just being biased and hating or whatever. But like, somebody that doesn't have a weird bias. So hopefully, I'll let you guys know on Twitter when I drop an article and you can check it out. I like feedback. And if you think I suck, that's cool. Put it in the comments. That's all right. I'm probably going to drum up a little bit of disgust, which is totally fine, but maybe it gives you a different perspective. We don't mention this all the time, but Greg does in his other shows, and I think he's 100% spot on. Please hit the like button on the YouTube and the Facebook or wherever you're watching right now. It helps us out, so I appreciate it. And go football, go Bills, go Browns. Hopefully we meet each other in the AFC Championship game, just like that Fox poll. And enjoy the weekend.
Exactly as Rich was saying, when you're starting new shows like this is only our 12th episode ever, to get off the ground, it really helps a lot if you give us a like, a rating, a review. If you're on iTunes, rate us, give us 5 stars. It would mean a lot. Give us a recommendation, share it, let people know if you enjoyed this, let them know on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or wherever you're listening. Help share it a little bit. It really goes a long ways. So thank you. And you guys can find me at Greg Tompsett on the Twitter machine, playing on the Underdog Fantasy app, enjoying all the elements there. I'm actually going, I'll be in New York this weekend watching my nephew play football, and I'm going to do some of the player prop parlays while I'm there and have some fun with it. So really looking forward to it. Thank you for checking us out tonight, guys. It's been a lot of fun. On behalf of Anthony Prohaska and Rich Haynes, I am Greg Tompsett. You have been listening to Cover One Fantasy, and we are out.